Hello everybody, sorry for that brief delay there. Hope you're doing well as always. So for anybody who missed my stream earlier today, I did manage to react to the new Elden Ring Shadow of the Erdtree Story trailer live as it dropped, and we did a lot of kind of like preliminary rounds of analyses then, but you know, with this being a hot topic, I kind of want to look at it a bit more. And now that the dust has started to settle, I can't actually even really say that it settled, I wanted to start like thinking about some of the implications that we can draw from the trailer more specifically and start trying to map that stuff out a bit more concretely to refine some of our thoughts around the game. So that's kind of where my headspace is for now. I do have like the notes that I started making from the last stream, and I started adding like a little bit to it like later, but I just didn't really have enough time to go through everything. So that's kind of where I'm at for now. I did manage to like record the trailer so that way I don't have to rely on YouTube playback, because I was having issues earlier today. So it should hopefully be smoother for us in general. And depending if I get like sick of doing this type of analysis, I might just go back to looking at some videos. So the ones that I'm thinking of right now are timdiggity's video on Miquella and Melina's potential connection, and then maybe his trailer reaction after that, and then maybe Kite Tails, because pretty much right after I ended stream earlier today, I saw Ratatoskr about to go live, and so I jumped into his stream and kind of had that on in the background, so I caught bits and pieces of it here and there, and liked what I was hearing and whatnot. So as always, welcome on in everybody. True Connoisseur, Scaleasy, Earthmind, nice to see all of you again. BB, I like the name for reasons. Doggo, Doug Robertson, how's it going? And Wes, I'm assuming that's pronounced. Yeah, okay, for anybody who doesn't know, the lore tuber Quaylog, oh, thanks, yeah, I kind of meant to make a community post about that, so hold on, let me do that now, actually. Alright, so let me... Hey everyone, if you got a sudden influx of recommended Tesla videos, chances are it's from Quaylog's channel. It's been hacked. She's already in contact with YouTube. Hopefully the situation gets resolved quickly. So if you unsubbed from her channel, keep an eye out for when it comes back. So, all right. Yeah, that's so crazy. Especially like today of all days for that to happen. It's yeah, so I noticed the Tesla ads on my channel, and I was like, why the hell is this channel getting recommended to me? So I went through and I clicked don't recommend, and now like knowing that it's Quaylog's channel, I'm like, I don't know if I can undo that. Like, I know you can undo, like, you can resubscribe to somebody, but I don't know if you can undo stop recommending me this channel. Maybe I just need to watch like a bunch of videos from her to like rectify that, but I don't know if the damage has been done. Like, that's just freaking terrible for a channel. Yeah, Eladelia says hacking someone to put up Tesla videos is odd. So the kind of armchair speculation that I've heard so far surrounding that is that it's trying to like target like crypto bros or people that'd be really into Tesla to like click on some phishing scam links and get them that way. Because certainly Quaylog's audience doesn't exactly seem like the crypto bro type, but I mean, that's just what happens when you get bad links. It doesn't matter. Yeah. I'm not going to say that, Clown. So some real libel/slander stuff right there. Her channel went down while Mr. Yada was watching her VOD, and you were very confused, and then it changed into Tesla. So it's so... Okay, yeah, let's actually just show this off because it's so strange. If you go to the YouTubes and type in QLag, you will get Tesla Live. And earlier I saw her videos were like still kind of up, and it actually had like her icon on this, but not in this spot. So it had like this logo here, and this is the channel it got changed to. So when you type in Quaylog and then you get Tesla Live, like I didn't freaking subscribe to Tesla Live. I'm subscribed to Quaylog, but it's just awful to hear that. Damn, and my stuff's coming up instead. Oh, because I looked at Quaylog stuff. That sucks, man. No, as far as I know, Quaylog did not do a bold new rebranding, timdiggity, and welcome back to the stream, my mans. Yeah, so setting all that sadness aside, we did check out the new trailer earlier today on stream as it came out. Timdiggity was here in the chat too, so I'm curious to see what he has to say about that if we get to that part of it. So starting for now, I think I'm going to go and play the trailer again and share some thoughts, because there's some things that I didn't share, like I didn't think of, and then some things that I probably should have shared more about that I didn't, I guess, in retrospect. So yeah, just here we go. Oh, Doug Robertson says Tesla Live does fake live streams of Elon talking about whatever and does Bitcoin giveaways. Okay, so that's how they scam people. Yeah, I can see the kind of a cross-lateral appeal that could potentially have there. No, I wasn't kidding about it being half-baked.
Miquella the Kind spoke of the beginning. The seduction and the betrayal. An affair from which gold arose.
So, I think I talked about it briefly on the earlier stream, but I don't remember like how much detail I actually went into here. So, my preliminary thoughts were because of this very suggestive womb looking like thing, that this could be related to the glow-eyed queen, mostly because of it being like pale, almost like a swaddling cloth, like, you know, kind of like a womb, and kind of similar to Godskin itself. It kind of gave me Mother Koss vibes. Like this stuff kind of looks like placenta, or like the red jelly that you can see in Bloodborne, which is you know, trigger warning related to like stillbirth imagery and whatnot. And this has like made me start thinking about like the runes and how Fia allegedly gestates her rune. I was like, well, we have the Fia situation, but that doesn't work super well for the male characters like Dung Eater and Gold Mask. So with that being said, maybe runes aren't necessarily, sorry, let me try to rephrase this. Maybe the gestation of runes aren't necessarily governed by anatomy. So whether or not this is a corpse is kind of like left up to the imagination. I think for all intents and purposes, this is probably supposed to be like literally understood to be cloth, but I feel like the imagery is meant to be very suggestive of other stuff. And because of that, I do wonder if it was like designed this way for like more censorship reasons. But yeah, I don't know. The core is just a vessel. Hey, Jay Dixon, welcome back in. Yeah, I know I can say what it looks like, but sometimes it's funnier being more vague. It's almost like that moment in The Big Lebowski when damn it, what's the actress's name? She walks up to the dude and she just says vagina, and he just stands there completely unfazed, like okay.
The seduction and the betrayal.
So, yeah, this part of whatever the hell you want to call this is interesting. Like, it looks a little bit purplish to me, which I don't know if this is just me, like, impressing this idea upon it. And this just kind of immediately gave me Godskin vibe. So, with that being said,
Betrayal.
going back to the point that I was trying to make originally, I don't remember exactly what I shared here, but because of that, I was originally thinking, oh my god, she's literally plucking out the Rune of Death. But like thinking about this a bit more, like I did mention that I don't think this really looks like the Rune of Death, and I did do like the comparison between like the Rune Arc and what's her name, Marika's Elden Rune in her like Scar Seal. So I think it's more emblematic of that than the Rune of Death. So yeah, I don't really know if this thing should be considered Glowmide Queen adjacent or not. But you know, that's kind of the fun of the live reaction, going down one rabbit hole and seeing where that leads, and then eating some like Alice in Wonderland magic mushrooms, and then like changing sizes and coming out another end entirely. No. I don't think, like, as Teen Sith says, the anatomy is all wrong for the angle for it to be a corpse. You think you did consider that for a bit as well. So this is the other thing that I probably should have shared on the first stream. So when I saw this, it kind of also just immediately reminded me of Mother Koss from Bloodborne. And if anybody's unfamiliar with that, shame on you. No, not really. Not everybody has a PS4, but so this is a little bit of a Bloodborne, like, kind of mega spoiler, just to give everybody a fair shake. But here we go. Oh, wait. This isn't a good angle. Okay. All right, I'll use Sanadiske's image again. So here we go. So, like I said, I don't think this is meant to be like a one-to-one type thing, but this is just kind of what immediately came to mind when I saw it, because of its overall shape and like what looks to be like almost placenta type blood surrounding a, you know, very provocatively like vagina-esque thing here. But it definitely doesn't fully match up. Some people were like, well, maybe it's a C-section, but this looks more like actual stitching in the form of like, not like an embroidery. I don't know enough about like tailoring to say exactly what this is. But my point is, it doesn't look like suturing or like medical stitches. So I'll just leave that there. So yeah, when I saw that, I'm like, And then like the sounds that accompany it, even like Mind Spatch was talking to me about it earlier on some of the comments, that the sound doesn't sound like, I don't know, it sounds more fleshy, I guess, than cloth. So hold on, let me back it up for you guys.
The seduction and the betrayal.
Yeah, it's more like liquidy, almost like a kangaroo pouch, I guess. That's right, guys. The GEQ is a marsupial. No, it's squishy. Yeah. It sounds absolutely disgusting. Those kind of sounds don't bother me. Yeah, as Blackman says, welcome back in, by the way, and Mao, nice to see you again, and Eamon. It's so bold for them to put that at the beginning of the trailer. Like I was like, just like, wow, they really put that out there. Holy crap. What times we be living in. Looks like she's pulling gold from whatever is in the bag. You love how gross it is? Yeah, man. Hey, Nacho, how's it going? Yeah, the whole place at the start gives inside of uterus vibes. I don't really remember that super well, but you might be right. Yeah, so this stuff, I've wondered if it's supposed to be like kind of analogous to red jelly a la Bloodborne or placenta, but like more like the fact of it going like wrong and whatnot. But it seems like we've got like a bunch of bones everywhere as well. I know some people were wondering if these corpses on like this corpse tower were skinned. It's a little bit ambiguous, maybe I need to like actually look closer. But thinking about this line, an affair from which gold arose, at first I was like, maybe this is like literally gold, but now I'm wondering if it means gold in the sense of the gold tree, which is, you know, the Erdtree. I could potentially see that because we're told this is where the Erdtree was born. And I guess it is kind of interesting. Well, the Japanese term for born doesn't always like mean like literal birth. Kind of like the same in English. It doesn't really matter, but yeah, so thinking about it a bit more, I could see gold here being a reference to the golden tree, the Erdtree, rather than like gold in general. Because like one of the points I'm like, if we take this hyper literally, how the hell do the ancient dragons and lightning fit into this? It's super annoying. So for now, my thoughts on this trailer is that it's probably like, you know, waxing poetic and shouldn't be taken super literally. And there might be some discrepancies in this kind of retelling of events depending upon this narrator. So take it with a grain of salt. I wouldn't be surprised if like it's like 99% accurate and there's like, you know, a 1% type thing within the text of the DLC. It's like, that doesn't really seem to fit. Kind of like how we've already got some discrepancies with like Ronnie and Godwin being killed at the same time with the Rune of Death, when we don't see Ronnie anywhere near Godwin's corpse in the opening cutscene or even like the story trailers. The gash in the meat tree? Mao only sees it as the Godskin skins. No, that's perfectly fine. And to be fair, I do want to be clear here that there's always going to be like multiple acceptable interpretations until we get like textual evidence to pigeonhole things. But to be fair, pigeonholing things is not exactly front and foremost in FromSoft games. Waves kind of takes them bringing in the ancient dragons as a loophole where conveniently they have gold aspects, but that doesn't mean necessarily Grave existed before them. Maybe you got autocorrected there. Hey Captini, nice to see you again. You think that thing looks like silk pulling from a lotus or a spider? You know what, now that you mention it, I don't think I've ever really seen the harvesting of silk from like a spider sack. Like, I know of it, but I don't think I've ever actually seen it. Pyrus, welcome on in. Oh yeah, and as Pyrus says, there's a good chance that this narrator could be like one of the NPCs that's closest to Miquella. So this could be somewhat biased. Maybe this is a secondhand retelling of a story that Miquella told them. I think that's a really strong possibility as well. Gek was a spider confirmed. She's a snake spider. We can do a field trip to learn about worms and lotus silk. Oh no. Alright. And Shoe Connoisseur thinks the voiceover does feel a bit like pro-Miquella propaganda. Okay.
And so too was Shadow born.
God, I just love the imagery here. This is it, bros. The Lion Dancer, this is really hype. So, I could potentially do some like CSI zoom in stuff. I don't know how much like the tower-esque part is going to like look as to whether or not these things are skinned more specifically versus what's it called? Just like corpses. But I think you could probably make the argument that the stuff down below might be skinned. At the very least, if they're all covered in blood, it kind of makes it harder to tell. I got pixels, bro. I don't know what to tell you. Like, I could definitely see why people would think that they're skinned, and I could also see why people wouldn't. So yeah, I'm just gonna leave that one up to the viewer to decide. Galamoth says, this is honest to God what some of your weirder dreams are like. Honestly, I kind of wish I had like more wild dreams. I don't know. This sounds pretty cool. Maybe you hate it. I don't know. It's ketchup. Thanks, Teen Sith. Got any fries? All right, Chadwick. We'll start over just for you. Yeah. And Galamoth doesn't think the whole structure is made of bodies. So now that we're talking about the structure, I might have like jumped to a super hasty conclusion for thinking that this would be like the prototypical Erdtree. Maybe because as soon as I like saw the overall shape of this with like Marika right next to it in the Rune arc, I'm like, oh, this is obviously an analog for the entrance to the Erdtree or the exit, depending, whatever, and whatnot. But that doesn't necessarily have to be the case, to be fair here. And the portal-esque effect is still very fascinating to me. I as I was catching like Ratatosker's stream, I heard him like audibly sigh when I think he was watching Ziostorm's video about the trailer, and he's like, "This is a gloomy sky," and Ratatosker's like, so maybe I want to walk this back a little bit. I don't know. I just think it's fun to connect like the purple color to like Melina and the Glow-Eyed Queen. Even if I like don't fully believe it, it's fun to just pull on these threads and try to make like a cohesive connected dot picture, I guess, from each one. But yeah, as far as like Gloam is concerned, to get on my like pedantic actually nerd horse here, Gloam is more associated with a time of day rather than a color. So it's kind of associated, I think, with twilight. I always forget like the exact nuance of it, but it's like dusk, which is why she was also called like the Dusk-Eyed Queen. But there's some nuance to it which I just can't be bothered to actually remember, because when the hell is it ever significant? But anyway, yeah, so the fact that it's gold out here kind of reminds me of the skies in Altus Plateau, which is why I jumped to the conclusion that like, oh, this is probably the Erdtree. Maybe this is like how one would access the lands between. And then one of my super half-baked theories, which I still like, could be that maybe this is kind of an interior aspect of the Erdtree. Maybe this is where like the Tarnished got sent and banished. I don't like fully believe that by any means, but I think it's kind of a cool idea, because at the beginning opening cutscene, the Tarnished has like this kind of a portal-esque looking thing open up, which seems like the Erdtree, because it's almost like we're on the stone platform, maybe. And yeah, so if this is supposed to be the Erdtree, that might catch a lot of people by surprise, because it's not like a wooden tree. Can you even really call this a tree at this point? I don't know. As I've said before, for like a long time, I've always viewed the Erdtree and the Crucible as like a filter rather than like a primordial soup. So this might have caught a lot of people off guard, but for me, like this kind of like matched what I thought of the Erdtree and or the Crucible to begin with. So whether this is the Crucible or if this is the Erdtree, it's, no matter how you feel about that, this isn't exactly the most tree-like tree, if it's supposed to be a tree, is kind of the point here. Now, to regress that topic slightly, I don't think this would be the actual Erdtree, because if if Marika is first picking up the Elden Ring, then the Erdtree shouldn't really exist. And so this has made me like legitimately wonder if there is some truth to the idea that the quote-unquote original Erdtree means a tree that is not the Erdtree, but was just the thing that came before, which is like very frustrating to me. But, you know, we'll have to deal with it when we get to it. So I'm just trying to brace myself for what the DLC may bring. All right. Mao asks, what if the Elden Ring of the Age of the Dragons was broken and was never remade until Marika created the Golden Order, and maybe this is why the dragons attacked the Erdtree to reclaim it? So also in your interpretation here, you'd be saying like the Golden Order would be when their epoch started, which I think is a fair thing to think and or note. So I guess my question would be, when, why, and how do you think the Elden Ring during the Age of the Ancient Dragons is broken? Beyond the whole, like, their god having said to have been fled or defeated or whatnot. And I think that's a fair assessment to make. I just don't know. I have wondered whether or not the dragons attacked the Erdtree, in retaliation for something else. But the vibe that I always got from the war against the Ancient Dragons is that it must have been after a while, because the Erdtree did exist to some degree long enough for there to actually be tree sentinels to guard it, which means to me it had to have been around like a significant period of time. It wasn't like within the span of a year of it sprouting up, it seemed. Yeah, Nasha says the Berserk Eclipse vibes are here too, indeed. Eamon asks, do I think the omens with the flower masks might be bringing back the 1.0 flower crucible? I honestly don't know. So this is something that I've like flip-flopped on for a while as to whether or not the Omen are actually like Crucible related, or if they predate the Crucible. And I should establish that what I tend to call the Crucible, I would call like the ancient Erdtree, and not whatever may have come before the Erdtree, because of the Japanese description of the Crucible Knights armor sets, which calls the Crucible the original Erdtree and not like the original form of the Erdtree, which to me can imply like vastly different things here. So if we do have Omen existing in the age before the Erdtree, oh yeah, this kind of goes into like one of the notes that I was first writing off stream. I should make it bigger. In that, if the Omens predate the Erdtree, and the Crucible is like confirmed to predate the Erdtree, like what does that mean exactly? One thing that stood out to me about the trailer is that the fighting that they talk about is done without grace and without honor, and it's not like extolled, it's not like sung about. And so that made me wonder if there is no like grace in the Shadowlands, and if we see Omen in the Shadowlands, is that where the Omen originated from? Are they pre-Erdtree? Are they post-Erdtree? Even within the confines of this trailer, we do have a potential like temporal time gap between the events here and what we see, and the Omen could have come even after this event. So I still don't know exactly what to think about that specifically, but the fact that the Omens are explicitly called graceless and there being a lack of grace in the Shadowlands potentially is very interesting to me. Maybe I didn't fully answer that question. What was it again? I'm blind. Okay. Oh, yeah, about the Flower Crucible. So, yeah, I don't know about the Flower Crucible and the connection to the Omens, especially, like, with content, because so much, like, seemed to get walked back. Like, Morgott was called Elden Lord in 1.0, and he's an Omen, so, yeah, I really don't have much else to say about that. Waves thinks the Miranda flowers are connected to the creation of the Erdtree. Man-eating flowers would kind of fit into this corpse tree idea. Yeah, I'm curious about like when Miranda sprouts first sprouted, because they are like carnivorous. And I wonder if like it was the power of like eating things that had like gold in their blood, which caused them to like get more power and like maybe get bigger. And that's where I like always turn like to the description of soap, where like filth covering the exterior eventually seeps inside, soiling one's very spirit. And I feel like that's super on display with how many variants of Miranda flowers we have who change based on their locale and whatnot. Intellect says, there is no confirmation that Marika wanted the Golden Order. It was created by Malekith after removing Destined Death. By all accounts, Malekith created the Golden Order, Shadow of the Erdtree. So this is kind of what I was talking about earlier, where it's vague if this is actually a factual retelling of a story, or if it's a secondhand telling of somebody else's story, like from Miquella to his NPC followers, then to us. So I think it's fair to say that there's probably been some artistic liberties taken in the so-called retelling of this story here. And because of that, I have wondered, like, wait a second, like, what's going on here? Is this the first time Marika gets the Elden Ring? Where is Godfrey in relation to this? Where is Malekith? Is he not a thing yet? Is she not technically an Empyrean at this point? Where are, like, the Two Fingers? Did the Two Fingers give her the power to like take these threads and like weave them together into like her rune arc type thing? I don't know. Oh yeah. And then like with the Godfrey and the Omen stuff, if the Omen do originate from this land, then what does that say about Godfrey and Marika's children being Omen? Were the Shadowlands still part of the Lands Between during that time? Was Godfrey not Elden Lord when he had those children with Marika? Or did he become Elden Lord with Marika after like the Erdtree and whatnot, and the splitting or disconnection happened later is some of like my biggest questions about not even just the DLC, but like kind of the lore in general. Mal says, you think this is because the Erdtree is a representation of the Elden Ring, but the Erdtree is yet to be born or to manifest in this form, so the Elden Ring must have had some difference. Oh yeah, I definitely think the Elden Ring in this form, which Marika seems to grab, is different. But I guess it's also a fair question to ask, is Marika actually pulling out the Elden Ring at this point, or is she just pulling out a Great Rune? Or something similar. We don't necessarily know if this is actually the moment where Marika transcends to godhood, but because it's the rune arc, it does seem to be evocative of the rest of the Elden Ring. So between that and the general Erdtree-like shape of this structure, it's really easy to jump to certain conclusions which aren't fully supported yet. Maybe the Shadowlands equals the Badlands. Maybe. Or maybe like the Badlands are part of the Shadowlands. I've definitely wondered that. Galamoth asks, is this the vision of the greater will, this golden realm? That would actually be really cool, not gonna lie. I didn't think about it that way. Hey Drew Wang, nice to see you again. Wes says, you believe the lack of grace is still associated with omens in the Shadowland, and Mesmer's quote about killing graceless beings in the previous trailer lines up with the Lion versus Mesmer. So yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking. Like, even if the omen are all born here, we're told they're graceless, and I wonder if the omens continue to be born in the lands between. I mean, that's kind of like a rhetorical question or statement, because we do kind of get told that they're born, at least in the sewers to some degree. So it seems like being... It doesn't seem like a requisite... How do I say this? A requirement to be an omen doesn't seem to be like being born in the Shadowlands. It might be hereditary to some degree, but if it is hereditary, what the hell is going on with Marika and Godfrey's children and like the Carians and whatnot? How come they're not all omen? Is this because like the power of the Crucible got sealed away? Are the omens actually related to the Crucible, or do they like potentially predate what I would refer to as the Crucible? So I'm definitely willing to revise many of my thoughts on this topic. Timdiggity thinks it looks like she's pulling down a veil. You mean like right here? So you think this is the creation of like the Shadow lands rather than just like Shadow in general, perhaps? Zhuang said, you assume you missed the part where we talked about the giant eye Marika's pulling grace out of and how it looked eerily similar to Godwin's eye. Exactly. Yeah, so I think Drew or maybe somebody else in the Discord had mentioned that as a possibility as well. That I think is a fair thing to bring up. So whether or not this is a corpse could be contingent upon like where we're looking. Is this like a Godwin head? Not like literally a Godwin head, but is this like analogous to a Godwin head? Is this an eye that she's pulling grace from? If it's an eye, I mean, it doesn't exactly seem to have eyelashes. It looks to be more cloth-like than anything. But I could see like why somebody could think like this maybe would be like the iris portion of the eye, and like this is the eyeball. I can definitely see where somebody's going with this. And if we want to get like super tinfoily about it, if the Rune of Death could transmogrify Godwin into that misshapen fish-like thing, what could the real Rune of Death do if Marika possessed it at this point in time? And of course, like that's super heavy speculation that's contingent upon a bunch of other ideas which haven't been substantiated in any capacity just yet. Let chat cook, yeah. Hey John, GDDR5, welcome on in. Intellect thinks the Age of Plenty is the very beginning of the Golden Order, then you have Godfrey's reign, and then you have Radagon's fundamentalism. Yeah, that's a very popular perspective on the timeline there. Oh yeah, and then I totally forgot about what Tim was saying with the pulling down the veil. My fault. Chappy popping off.
An affair from which gold arose.
Sorry about that. So you think she's pulling down here? I don't know, but I can definitely see where you're going from with that. Like, if this was to extend like way off into the sky, I could see that. But I don't know, just because like I don't think she would need to be at the apex point of it, but I would like to have seen it like point down a little bit somehow. Maybe it doesn't need to. So I definitely think that's a cool idea though. And hey, Amin, nice to see you again. Yeah, so I mean, that's kind of like what I started off with today. That I wondered if this is the Rune of Death, but I don't think visually it matches up with any depictions of the Rune of Death that we've seen. So I'm really starting to become more skeptical of that idea, even though it's like it's probably like the first idea that I floated when I looked at the trailer originally. Mao thinks Godfrey must have become Elden Lord after America was already a god to conquer the lands, and he was here on the LOS that America became a god. So yeah, I don't know about that because I don't know when they had the Omen children and whatnot, and or Godwin. Like, I could see Godwin being older if he's like not misshapen by like whatever is going on with like this stuff and like the horns. And I could also see the opposite being true, that the Omens are older because like the Omen stuff is from an older time. But yeah. Hey, Red Knight, welcome on in. You heard somebody say that it's perhaps a swaddling cloth in the intro. What if America is pulling out Mesmer's Grace and using it? I don't know about Mesmer's Grace. Actually, like the baby Mesmer's Grace, like the statue of the baby, perhaps. That's an interesting idea. I don't know if that's exactly what you're going for with that. Could that be her own child and it's Rune? Seduction, betrayal. So, I guess I should have said on the stream earlier, like, seduction does work as a translation, but it doesn't necessarily have, like, the overtly sexual overtones as the English does with seduction. Temptation might be a little bit better because it does preserve the ambiguity of whether it's, like, a sexual temptation or just, like, other forms of temptation. So, I'm just trying to think about that. In this context, could she have been seduced, and then could she have had a baby and then betrayed everything? That might be a possible reading of things. Like, I don't think that might be what you're going for, but I'm just like kind of spinning off what you're weaving there. Intellect's telling me to go through the lore considering America is the Glowmide Queen. Things you wouldn't expect to start falling into place. I mean, you could definitely check out my second video on Elden Ring where I go into the Glowmide Queen and float that idea. And true connoisseurs leaning on this moment being the birth of the Erdtree rather than the sealing of death. And so that's kind of like what I've been trying to consider as well, because I was like, oh man, is this like literally plucking out like the Rune of Death? But I don't really think this works, and this could just be the birth of the Erdtree. And so if this is the birth of the Erdtree, that might not necessarily mean that it's plucking of the Rune of Death, and so therefore the Golden Order might not have actually started at this specific moment, if that makes sense, because this isn't exactly the most Rune of Death looking like thing I've ever seen. Hey Kent, welcome on in. And yeah, John, I do think it is kind of reminiscent of a placenta. Definitely very visually suggestive. Yeah, and Teen Sith says, what if Marika was the one betrayed? I've wondered that as well. And maybe that's just like revenge, which she did. That baby ain't dead, okay. Black Man says, seduction sounds more like getting someone to lower their guard. I've wondered that as well, and man, it's like, there are so many ways to go down this road that like it's like choosing. So it's like opening up a choose your own adventure book, and then the first page says like literally go to every other page in the book, and like that's a valid route. This is kind of what it feels like right now. Monana, welcome on in. You feel like this scene is also meant to show us that Radagon has always been America. And then Teen Sith is a big avid defender of that theory. And so she, wants to incense the chat by saying split body truthers in shambles. Kent thinks Mesmer's closed eye is a gloam eye. Everybody has a gloam eye. I am taking that seriously, by the way. It's just kind of fun to meme about it. So, Mao, you say the Omen are more like a mutation linked to the Crucible. I will say source.
And so too was Shadow born. What followed was a war unseen.
Then we got the Wicker Men, our little soldier dudes. We've got some like Ivy style designs on that stuff.
One that could never.
Huh. Okay. I don't think this is ultimately relevant, but I do wonder if this weird Ivy looking like thing is meant to correlate to like the Ivy looking like thing on like the Nox chairs and in the not Eternal City Towns, but what are they called? The fake Eternal City Towns like Celia and in Ordina, the liturgical town. Teen Sith will know what I'm talking about. I don't think it like fully works, but I'm just like thinking about it now. It almost looks like a sprout of some sort, to be fair. Oh yeah, and I guess I should specify that I think like this must have happened way, way, way earlier than what we just get like right here. Galaxy Dragon, nice to see you again. The Wicker Men are so cool. The Mitchells, yeah. Dwarf Chad, welcome in. Oh yeah, no, they've definitely been made after the war against the giants because they're actually fire giant heads like on their like belt area. Yeah, on their thighs. Okay, yeah, you know. Okay, sweet. And Jedediah, welcome on in. Oh yeah, you said something a moment ago. Sorry if it was already mentioned. It seems significant that she's making the rune arc pose. Could this be her almost summoning or creating the great runes initially, harnessing the crucible? I don't know, because like the blessings are supposed to pool at the bottom of the rune arc, and we're told that America personally gave the blessings of the Erdtree or whatnot to the first followers of it. So there might be something going on. I would definitely have liked it more if the pose that Melina makes matches what America does here, or like vice versa. I actually, let me just pull up footage for you guys, because I might be misremembering after all. Oh, damn, it's loud. Okay. So Melina needs to summon her Erdtree thing. Okay. So she brings her hands down and then she goes out wide. If she cupped her hands and like put them up, I would have been like, oh, and like lost my mind. So I do wish there was more of a connection between that. So yeah, I definitely don't know how I feel about America's pose. Oh yeah, and I forgot, I wasn't actually watching YouTube. So I'll need to pull up the old video. Okay. Where was I? Where's my DLC thing? Where's my time bar? There it is. Okay. So I was like around here. Okay. Hold on. Let me tuck in the doggy. The Tomb of the Giants is a pretty scary area, especially on a first playthrough. I'll just go ahead and say it so we get cursed. I do kind of remember the layout of the area, but a lot of the specifics are hard to remember. Byhander, and I think as we start to go down now, we get shot at, or if we're not being shot at right now. Okay. I thought there was a way to fall there. Shows how well I actually remember that layout. Actually. Alright, I'm back. Sorry about that. She's all tucked in. Hey Captini, you want to see the video in full one time? Sure, I'll finish making the point, and then I'll play it all and like shut the hell up for a couple minutes for you guys to enjoy it. And yeah, if this is your first time seeing the video, I do want to thank you guys for, you know, like watching it here rather than like on the thing. That's pretty sweet. Okay, so what was I gonna say?
One that could never be put to song.
All right. Okay. Yeah, the dog distracted me. Okay, I think that's a pretty good transition point. So I'll go back to the very beginning of the trailer here for you guys.
Miquella the Kind spoke of the beginning. The seduction and the betrayal. An affair from which gold arose. And so too was Shadow born. What followed was a war unseen. One that could never be put to song. A purge without grace or honor. The tyranny of Mesmer's flame. And so kindly Miquella would abandon everything. His golden flesh, his blinding strength, even his fate. But we are not deterred. We choose to follow. Will you walk with us?
You know what I just realized? I was like, why the hell did my volume just change? It doesn't sound like it changed. I think it's because I turned down the volume when I was actually recording that from YouTube. So it's just stuck there. So I'm going to have to re-record this footage and maybe do it without the headphones on. Anyway, yeah, so that was like the full trailer. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you if that was your first time watching it. That's kind of shocking, to be honest. So yeah, Moxie, nice to see you again. Definitely nice to have you in chat. And V-Limit, welcome back to the stream. How you guys doing? So, yeah, there's a lot to talk about with that. But let me go back to kind of where we were. All right, we were like about at this part with the Wicker Men.
One that could never.
Oh yeah, so Teen Sith, you were asking like what I was asking you about. You might not actually be watching the screen right now, but I was like wondering if these things could be related to like the wooden structure on the tower that I was giving you shit about in the Discord earlier today. Doing well. Sad you missed a lot of the afternoon hype while you had to get some other stuff done. Oh man, it's totally understandable. Today's been a bit rough, but yeah. I don't know why I like didn't even think to consider that something could drop like literally like the 1 month anniversary before the Shadow of the Erdtree came out, but you know, here we are. Oh yeah, and then you guys were talking about Kindly Miquella. So this is something that Frog Nation, the localizers, have done for a while now. I think it's a pretty elegant solution for a kind of hard thing to get across between Japanese to English at times. I don't know if kind, or more specifically Kindly Miquella, is like the best choice here, but for what it's worth, as far as the Japanese is concerned, he's called Miquella-sama in the Japanese like subtitles and whatnot, and I'm just going to assume that most people understand like sama is a suffix in Japanese that like denotes like a high amount of like honor or like respect towards like the thing you're talking about or person you're talking about more specifically. And it's kind of difficult to convey that level of respect in English by just saying like somebody's name. So like Miquella, Lord Miquella is pretty good, but like always using Lord tends to become a bit flat and sounds a bit awkward in English at times. So I think in Bloodborne, Frog Nation may have had like the most elegant solution that I've seen as far as like a localization goes, and the doll referring to the hunter as like Karyudo-sama, which means like hunter-sama, and the English that they used for that was good hunter, because that just gave so much personality to the doll that she seems to kind of revere you, but it isn't exactly like a fully like personal relationship either, because there is like a little bit of distance by calling somebody like good hunter. Like it's you're not like referring to somebody by their name. So there's, I don't know, I just think that's a really brilliant localization there. Even if I wouldn't say it's like the most like technically what's the word, literal translation, there's nothing wrong with it. Meow asks, don't they commonly mix up R and L in Japan? Maybe it's Messer's frame? No, definitely not. I mean, the R and L thing, they do get confused because it tends to be... The Japanese R sound tends to be in between the English L and R. It's more like a rolling of the tongue, which is why a lot of Japanese speakers are more comfortable with like Spanish, because like the way they like say their R's and stuff, I guess. But yeah. It's almost like a D sound at times, like ra, la, ra, da. So, yeah. Chadwick says, kind is self-sacrificial, kindly is gentle, lifting, it's sweet. Well, the thing is, kind is also like a German thing, which can be like Wunderkind, like child. And that is also a pretty good descriptor of Miquella, but it's a little bit more distant from like the Sama reading. And so calling somebody kindly just feels a little bit awkward in modern English, I think. Maybe you guys feel differently though. Yeah, as True Connoisseur says. Wave said, we never really had such an explicitly good character, at least portrayed as such in FromSoft games, to your memory at least. He feels very special. You take that back. You do not slander the Chapel Dweller in this chat. Mao thinks Godfrey is a primitive human, so his roots are more closer to this era, and this could pop up in his descendants, and we know that the other royals also had Omen children. Alright, so yeah, going back to the video here. Okay, so John, do you have some familiarity with both Spanish and English then? If you're familiar with their phonetics? Okay, so on this shot, we talked about this a decent amount. I didn't go back and like try to cross-reference what robes I think these are, but I do think this dude, Omen thing here, kind of looks like the lion dancer dudes. But I could also see this might be looking like the types of omens that we saw wielding the chakram in that promotional artwork the other day. So just without like the weapons out and a little bit more clothed. And we got like legionnaires. It's really cool actually seeing a super disciplined army in a FromSoft game, because you never actually get to see that in the final build. And then this is just ridiculous. So yeah, my first knee-jerk reaction is like, is this Leyndell? But I think this is supposed to be... Did we say that this was the crumbling city, or is this the area near the actual Shadow City? I think it became clearer later on. I don't remember what I said. But anyway, when you look up here at these, like this tower thing, the architecture has like the same Ivy style carvings as you can see in other places throughout the Lands Between. A lot of the buildings look very reminiscent of what you can find in Leyndell, like the domed features. I didn't think to compare it to Fair Missoula, so I'm going to go ahead and do that now on stream. Because I know like in the upper reaches of Fair Missoula, there's more like normal looking buildings, but nothing quite like the tower thing. So in my mind's eye, I think they're slightly different, but I just can't recall. Yeah, so this is more like domed or arched, whatever. So yeah, I don't think that works too well with this stuff. I should probably have other stuff. This is more of a door than the actual building. Maybe I need to like look at my footage of like my vantages rather than my screenshots. And Wes thinks that the dude on the steps looks like the Omen dudes with the candles from the first trailer. Yeah, I think that's a possibility as well. But I almost feel like Omens just tend to look like Omens. I think that one looks a little bit more, not like stocky, but like thicker than the ones that we saw in that trailer, because those ones seemed really thin for the most part. Hey Moxie, welcome back. Nice to have you again. Diego Valencia, welcome on in. And Nihil and everybody else who's been joining in. You kind of thought Moog? Yeah, I had like the knee-jerk reaction of like Garank at first, but it's like, no, that doesn't really work. And then I like noticed the horns. I'm like, okay, maybe kind of Morgott, because that was like another vibe that I got. And then I thought Moog, and then I didn't think it like fully matched him either, and it seemed more likely like the lion dudes. So, yeah, I don't actually think it looks too much like Fair Missoula now. Oh, duh. I'm not actually like on a different thing. Shadow of. I need like 2 instances of VLC open, it seems. Oh no, this is the first trailer. What am I doing? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I don't think Fair Missoula looks too much like this after all. I wonder if this is similar to Volcano Manor. There's something about like this railing which kind of reminds me of like going into that one building that has all the Alban orcs in it. For what it's worth, I don't see a Pizza Hut here, so it's not fully reminiscent of Volcano Manor either. And if you guys know what I'm talking about with the Pizza Hut reference, I legitimately mean there's a building that looks like a Pizza Hut in Volcano Manor. No, Chadwick, you've not missed the Feast of Flames discussion yet. It's the gold that throws you off? Understandable. Monana asks, do you think this is where America got inspired with how Leyndell was built? The main source being the outer wall is a similar design. So I actually think the outer wall of Leyndell was built much later. So maybe, because there could have been a Leyndell that was more centered around the fortified manor initially, and then the other stuff could have been built up later. But there is some shared iconography between Leyndell, Fair Missoula, and the like some random area here in the Shadowlands with the chrysanthemum design. And if you remind me after like going through this trailer, I'll go back through the first Shadow of the Erdtree trailer and show off what I mean. But I've definitely talked about that before in the previous streams. Peep the details on the top of the towers, like this tower over here, or like this one with the flame in front of it, or this one. Yeah, I definitely think it looks more like a Leyndell without all the gilded ornamentation on top. So maybe not even like lower Leyndell, but still kind of like upper Leyndell. Alright, Teen Sith, you have a good night, and thanks for dropping in as always. Take care. The thick boy close to Mesmer? Oh, the thick tower? Which one? Like this one? Because or this one. Probably, I would assume this one. This is super cool. So yeah, going back to like Mesmer's Flames, I floated the idea that in some ways they almost kind of remind me of like the Briar sorceries, because they almost seem like thorny, but not, because they seem more like liquidy than anything. But I do wonder if there's a through line between like guilt, flame, and like blood, because his flame is kind of reminiscent of blood flame, especially with it looking more like a liquid like this. So I wouldn't be surprised if his snakes can literally become fire or something like that, or like if these are like additional snakes. Just having like a Rick and Morty moments where my man just disintegrates people and throws snakes to make people think they get transformed into snakes. The one on the left, it has like the Nox detail. This one? Yeah. Jedediah says, you think the black stuff in Mesmer's Flames reminds you of the black stuff seeping in the Divine Towers. Yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about, and I think that stuff is reminiscent of the goo type mist within the Elden Beast's body as well. It's an interesting thought. Do I think the snakes are attached to him? I don't know, to be honest. Like, yes, but also no. And then a lot of people are really wondering about this figure, which seems more like feminine in its structure here. I wondered if she was like carrying a rallying standard of some sort at first, but even like that looks a bit weird. Then this kind of also can look like a giant godskin peeler almost. There's something going on with this. It kind of looks floral almost, but I'm trying to like remember or recall like a similar shape to this that I've seen like in real life, but I don't know. It's like a really weird thing, because like this is an inanimate object. Maybe it's supposed to represent somebody that was close or important to this person. People have already floated the idea that this could be the Glowmide Queen, because, you know, who isn't the Glowmide Queen at this point? But I also think it's really fascinating that we've got like Mesmer's soldiers chilling in the fire, so
of Mesmer's flame.
Maybe it's just like a vantage thing, but this dude definitely looks like he's walking through it. So maybe these dudes are impervious to Mesmer's flames because they're like associated with him. Spear of Longinus? Oh no, do you think this is what stabbed America? You think you could summon additional snakes? Maybe. And Nasha thinks this could be a weapon born from a corpse? Potentially. For what it's worth, even though it does spiral, we don't exactly get to see a like double helix design yet, but that doesn't mean that that could not be the case. Shadow of Ava? Oh no. This one's deliberately obscured, nothing like that in the previous trailer. And, oh boy, my favorite, our lion dancer, bro. So, yeah, the first time, like, my first time seeing the trailer, I was just, like, too excited to see this guy. Actually, I don't think I could, like, really make it out that well because of the artifacting from the live stream. But the second time, I was like, wait a second, he's fighting Mesmer. Oh, man. So Mesmer pulls out his flame and gotta zoom in like super slowly here because it's hard to make out the retina. All right, so here you can start to see his retina still. Okay, there we go. Is still like the one slit. It is still like gold. Because at first I was like, wait, is his eye like silvery? Did he get his gold later? No, it's just like a lighting thing, which is always a fun thing to ask yourself when watching anything like or like looking at anything from Soft related. Is this a color thing or is this a lighting thing? I don't know. Oh yeah, and some people have wondered whether or not Mesmer is like half blonde back here or like red. So speaking of like all those lighting and color things, eat your heart out, chat. Is that his real face? I don't know, man. Oh, you're probably talking about the lion thing. I was like, man, that's kind of messed up to say about Mesmer. Oh yeah, I guess I probably should point that out, that the lion face it's still a bunch of dudes in a suit. Like you see this guy's hands moving the jaws and whatnot. But this one looks like more weathered than the one we saw in the previous trailer somehow. And I was trying to like look at this stuff, but it's kind of hard to make it out. And it's probably not going to be too important anyway. This stuff is almost kind of like the Ferrum Azula adornments on the Beastmen. And this stuff is also kind of similar to the Banished Knight armor. So I wouldn't be surprised if the Banished Knights like were originally affiliated with this stuff. And that might be why they're banished. And so that might tie into the Mesmer stuff. So like the Banished Knights could have been banished long ago, maybe from the Shadowlands. I don't know. That's just kind of like a new thought that's occurring to me here. Perfumer looking gear. Yeah, and as Galamoth says, the next scene is just a bunch of the dead omens wearing the lion hoods. So yeah, because this is like a man or omen made costume type thing, I do wonder how literally it should be taken. And then we see another close-up of Mesmer's like claw-like hand. I can't tell if his thumb is like still super like long looking. No, that thumb is definitely like a finger. What the hell? But his other hand looked a bit more normal from the other trailer. So this is probably where we get the impaler thing from. So it looks like we may have had two masks of the lion dudes, and maybe these are actual people. And if they're normal people, they look like to have like normal skin, like tannish, rather than the like really rough looking, I don't want to say bark like stuff, but you know, like is it Cretanius? Caratanius, looking like skin of like Morgott or Moog. Keratinus? I'm not sure. Looks like a singular creature to you? Chadwick asks, would a spear go through a costume or a real head? I don't think these are meant to be heads specifically, because I feel like this is definitely an arm, and then this is definitely a leg. And to go along with that, we've got other people impaled, so maybe it's just a little bit of both. I don't know if like multiple people are impaled on each stake, but it seems more likely it could be a singular thing. Oh, maybe there's another one over here too. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5? Or is it actually 6? Maybe this is 2. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Alright, so this right here is kind of reminiscent of that like breaking apart castle that we saw in the first trailer, but I don't think this vantage works for that one castle specifically that had like the stuff going in the sky, because it shouldn't be facing towards the shadow tree this way. So I still think this is the one that should have had like the tower underneath the shadow tree, and that tower isn't here in this thing. So I don't know if this is like a camera trick or I don't know. And so what we're told is if Mesmer was like a usurper or tyrannical to some degree, then with him fighting the lion dudes, those are like the pre-Erdtree people, we're told by Miyazaki. And so that helps paint a picture of what's going on in the Shadowlands to a small degree.
And so kindly Miquella would abandon everything.
Oh yeah, and then I should point this out again on this stream that the crumbling tower is like crumbling up and towards the shadow tree. And that's really cool because we don't have anything like that in the base game. Like this stuff even seems different from like the gravity magic. I wondered if there was like some gravity stuff going on. Maybe this stuff is being integrated into the coiling tree around the shadow tree to like choke it of life. I don't know. I really don't believe that. I'm just kind of like floating, pun intended, some ideas here. Dwarf Chad thinks it's the genocide of the Crucible people. Maybe. Hey Kudik, welcome on into the stream. You don't want Miquella to be evil, you're just tired of every character turns evil, subverting expectations. Meanwhile, Chapel Dweller remains the goodest of boys. Yeah, you think the sap looks like Marika's necklace. I didn't think about her necklace, but I did wonder if it was supposed to be evocative of the pose in which we see Marika when we enter the Erdtree, and like the crucifixion. But I was like, oh, okay, maybe it's just like going along the branches, because like, why is it like poking out here where you'd see like Marika's head and then like goes down? But I think you could explain it with the branches. And so yeah, going back to that idea of like the corpse tree and like the things being integrated into the Erdtree and like the Crucible or the Erdtree blending life together, I think you could make the argument that from the roots, like the sap will the tree will get its nutrients to produce this sap, which might be like the Erdtree's original bounty. And so with the Erdtree losing its bounty in the Age of Abundance, it makes me wonder if part of the reason it lost its abundance was because it was being choked out in the Shadowlands. And I don't know how I feel about that, because like, why wouldn't Marika try to deal with the Shadowlands? Maybe tarnishing the tarnished of their grace and sending them afar where they'll die was a way to conduct that hidden, unseen war in the Shadowlands to try to restore that Age of Abundance. And maybe it didn't work out, and then Radagon came up with a solution to just kind of work around this usurpation system that Mesmer may have going on. But of course, all of that is very highly speculative there. John asks, what if both trees were made together and dual opposites that work together? I don't know how I feel about that, because they seem like two different organisms, because this one is the one that's coiling and this one is completely straight, other than, you know, being tilted. So it just, they don't seem to be that kind of thing, because we do have a lot of, maybe not a lot, but we have a decent amount of imagery of like crossed trees. I think even the Halig tree is a good example of a crossed tree that doesn't quite look like this and looks like a normal organism. Whereas like this thing seems, I don't want to say parasitic, but more like a competitor for resources perhaps. And beyond like the Halig tree, we have the crossed tree tower shield, which is one of my favorite items in the game for being one of the most cryptic yet evocative. So here's the icon for it. So this is supposed to represent a tree according to its description. But what fascinates me about this in particular is that we've got like this flame design at the base of the tree, and like we've got like leaves and like kind of thorns coming out of it, but like there's no trees in the lands between that we see, which remind me of this in particular, the hailing tree included. So yeah. Gallimah thinks it looks like Black Hole Sun. I know what you're talking about, man. And Pixie thinks the Erdtree needs more bodies to produce sap. So yeah, I have wondered whether or not part of the reason that Protection of the Erdtree says the Erdtree became the embodiment of order through war would be because it needed to kill things, to take their memories, to carve into the trunk of the Erdtree to get their gold to continue to grow. That, I think, is a very strong possibility of how like the Erdtree was originally supposed to function. And maybe that system got broken somewhere along the way, either due to whatever is going on in the Shadowlands, or after the Night of Black Knives, when Deathroot gets kind of introduced into the world and begins to infiltrate the roots of the Great Tree Network. All right. Catini asks, is this the Game of Thrones guy part of the DLC story writing? We don't know. That's a good question. No matter like what part of the story we're looking at, how much of it is influenced by George R.R. Martin. I'm sure like opinions about this will differ by individuals. Like I know a lot of people who are more into George R.R. Martin see a lot of his influence on the game, whereas since I'm more familiar with FromSoft and Hidetaka Miyazaki's work, I see a lot of their influence on the game. And so it's kind of really difficult to tell where one begins and the other ends. But for what it's worth, Miyazaki did say like the materials that George wrote were all still there from the beginning, and even the DLC is drawing from them to some extent. But we don't know how closely it's drawing from those source materials, or if it's just like the equivalent of based on a true story for like something like the Amityville horror movie versus like the actual events of Amityville. So yeah. Million possibilities are unfolding in Chadwick's mind. Welcome to the club, bro. Waves is curious about how they knew the flame of ruin could burn the Erdtree. It seems like Mariko claimed the Erdtree could never burn if she could. So we are told that the flame of ruin, that the giants kind of conducted a war against the Erdtree, so there's a chance that they could have burned the Erdtree, or maybe a minor Erdtree if like a minor Erdtree sprouted from the Erdtree's roots back then. But that's a pretty good question, and the weirder thing to me is that it seems like the Flame of Ruin kind of doesn't even do it until you actually have Destined Death. So does that imply Destined Death had to have been sealed after the Flame of Ruin was sealed because people thought the Flame of Ruin worked, but it doesn't? Were people mistaken? Maybe. Eladelia says, Jar Jar Martin wrote the background lore, which would include the origin of Marika that's making up the DLC, but FromSoft was free to deviate. Yeah, that's kind of the vibe that I get. And with Miyazaki saying he wanted to surprise George in previous interviews, to surprise somebody means to like make a pretty big change. So I am a bit skeptical about like how much influence George had directly for the final stuff in the game, but who knows?
And so kindly Miquella would abandon everything.
And so earlier on the first stream, somebody had brought up in the chat, they wondered if this could be like a divine tower. And I think that's a really neat idea. I was like, I don't see it at first, but I was like, wait a second. What if it's a divine tower without all of the extra like stony growths surrounding it? Maybe there's something to it. Or maybe like it continues down into this cliff thing that might not have always been a cliff.
Thing. His golden flesh, his blinding strength. Either than his fate.
So yeah, the previous shot was most likely Miquella, because it seems like pretty short, the blonde hair and whatnot. We've got the visual motif of the field of wheat or reeds, whatever you want to call it. And then immediately following that, we get a transition from like this gold Empyrean-esque looking like stuff to a purplish feminine figure, which could be most related to Saint Trina. So I took the time to point it out on the first stream, and I'll go ahead and do it again here, in that as far as the Japanese goes, I know the English is a lot more ambiguous on the front. Saint Trina is definitely more female presenting, because Japanese is gendered in the way that Saint Trina is called Saint Trina. This is just Trina right there. Hold on. Let me go back to the item descriptions. Okay. Saint Trina's arrow. So, okay, it's just Trina there. Saint Priest of... Okay. So, Seijo Torina. So, Sei is the character for holy. Jo is the character for woman. So, holy woman Trina. So, Saint Trina. So, with that being said, Saint Trina does... If this is supposed to be Saint Trina, which I think is, like, pretty damn evocative of that idea, because of the purple petals in the background. Maybe they're supposed to be like lilies, but anyway, after the cut away from Miquella and being told of Miquella abandoning his fate, I think this is definitely supposed to be Saint Trina. And one question that arises from that is Miquella abandoning his fate? Sorry, is he abandoning his form as Saint Trina? And then Crunchy on Ratatosker's reaction had some like really cool ideas about like whether or not the Empyreans are fated to become other people, because, and I'm directly lifting this from Crunchy, so I'm not trying to like take credit for this by any means. We have the examples of Miquella kind of becoming Saint Trina. We have some weird stuff with like Millicent and Melina, but more specifically, when Millicent is kind of like dying, she tells us that she doesn't want to become something other than herself, which might be like a pretty big red flag. But she's not exactly an Empyrean, not exactly a demigod, so it's kind of easy to forget about her in relation to all of this. And then Crunchy also mentioned how Ronnie didn't want to be controlled by that thing. And so if she's being controlled by something else, does that mean she's like no longer herself? Is there a similar type thread going on with Saint Trina here? Could that be part of the motivation for why Miquella would abandon his flesh and his fate? I think these are all excellent questions to be raised. And so I did look back at the Japanese for the difference between Shukume versus Unmei. So I didn't know this, but apparently Unmei, fate in Japanese, doesn't necessarily mean that fate in the sense of being set in stone. So Unmei, I guess I'll pull up G-Show so that way you guys get some like visual feedback here. Unmei, and G-Show isn't going to show this off. I'm just like want to show you the characters and whatnot and like why I was a little bit confused. Unmei can mean fate, destiny, and lot, but your fate isn't set in stone, and it can be counteracted through one's effort. I didn't know that there was that kind of subtext to it, whereas Shukume, which is used on the Japanese subtitles for the trailer at this section, does mean fate, but it means predestination more specifically. So this is the fate that you're born with, and this is the fate that Miquella is abandoning here. And for what it's worth, destined death and all of the fate written in the night stars and all that stuff is Unmei, which makes it sound like all of that could be changed, which I had no idea about, and it's definitely going to make me rethink some things. All of that fate could be changed, but this fate shouldn't be, which is like, okay, if that's the case, then how is like Miquella abandoning this? So maybe he's going through like a completely different metamorphosis than what was initially set out for him, which is potentially like very exciting to consider. So with this recontextualization of Unmei in mind, it does make me reconsider like what's going on with Renala and her moon. Did she use her will to conquer fate and encounter her moon? Because Renala does have cut dialogue about your moon is Tirani, like, your moon is your will, something like that. I would need to look it up, but I don't remember the exact quote off the top of my head. So if the fate in the stars can be changed, and destined death isn't necessarily like fully death and can potentially be changed, one idea that I've had in relation to that is if your fate is changed through effort, is all of that stuff relating to the Deathbirds and like the branch sword talismans about like clinging to life at the moment of death, is that part of the Unme in destined death? And if so, this is like super huge speculation, is part of the goal of having people die in battle for the Erdtree to contradict their original fates, so that way their fate gets diverted into the Erdtree? That is just kind of like my current thought on the matter for now, because there's like a lot of poetic stuff about that I really like, and I really want to run with it, but I honestly don't really know how relevant it is. So hopefully you guys in the chat will enjoy that. And then Lux Mortis, welcome into the stream. And somebody else that I saw, Davin Amos, Pole, nice to see you again. And I thought there was somebody else. Corporate Nothing, I don't think I said anything. So yeah, I will definitely admit that I lifted Jar Jar Martin from, I believe, Epic Name Bro. Once I heard that, I like kind of lost it. Yeah, you want George to publish the damn book you wrote for Elden Ring before he dies. You don't care if he publishes a Song of Ice and Fire. You just want the Elden Ring lore notes. Got it. Yeah, and as V-Limit mentions, like, even this figure's dress is kind of like petal-like. That's kind of a good observation there. I guess even like the hair kind of looks like a flower now that you mention it. Or like, not hair, but like the veil, whatever the hell you want to call this, the covering. Wave said, it seems like Destined Death has to be in the ring to be applied to everyone, but we don't do anything to return it to the ring, and we never see it visually in there besides the Age of the Duskborn. Well, to be fair, I don't think we actually return the Rune of Death in the Age of the Duskborn. I think it's like a different rune that might have a completely different function, but that's a little bit also hidden in the Japanese side of things, because it makes it sound like a more definite thing in English, but it's a lot more speculative in Japanese there. Waves said, sleep and death seem connected in some way as well. Similar iconography and all, especially since sleep is the release for those who cannot die. Yeah, this is a term that I like to say a lot, especially in relation to like Bloodborne and Elden Ring. But I think like sleep, I think of sleep and dreams as the middle ground between life and death, between consciousness and unconsciousness. It's a very, very common trope in pretty much all mythologies and religions, I think. Yeah, Eladelia says your lot in life is a thing you can change. Makes sense. Sweet. All right, John, if you're still around, thanks for sticking around, and you have a good night or a day, wherever you are. Waves said, this implies America created a rune from Destined Death. Might add credence to the idea that's what's happening in the first scene of the story trailer. So we are told that that's the birth of gold and the birth of shadow. I've wondered whether or not that shadow means the so-called plucked shadow of Destined Death before it was actually plucked. So I think that's a really strong possibility. I've mentioned this before in streams like a long time ago, but I haven't mentioned it recently. But I don't know how this should be taken. I'm trying to remember if... What's the Rune of Death called? Ear. So, okay. It wasn't East, it was Ear. So, if Algis is like the Rune of Life, I consider it kind of analogous to our good old Elden Rune that's found in America Source Seal and Scar Seal. Oh, this one's probably better. So I think this is kind of comparable, except it doesn't have like the thing at the top almost. And so if you take that idea of inverting life to create death, because they're kind of all part of a cycle here, then it'd be nice if this matched up with the Rune of Death, but it kind of doesn't when you actually look at the rune in game. Like this, well, the arc is in the like right orientation now. This makes like the stake go off in the wrong direction. But this is an idea that I've wondered, more particularly when I saw something interesting in the Elden Beasts attacks. So let me see if I... Okay, so when you cast Litany of Proper Death, it goes facing outwards from like the thing that casts it. However, when the Elden Beast uses its variation of the Sacred Blades of Gold, it actually gets inverted towards itself, which is like, wait a second. How come this is backwards? So is there some kind of implied inversion of the order in something like this? And if the litany half of the like image of order can be inverted, can the same be applied to the American half? And does that work for like Marika's rune? Does Marika's rune represent life? She wants an epoch of life. And what is the opposite of life? If you flip it upside down, at least for like this imagery, you have death. So with everything being a cycle, death being inextricable from life, well, originally inextricable from life, according to things like the remembrance of the regal ancestor, that is just kind of like one recurring thought that I've had in relation to all of this. Soft fate and hard fate for easier understanding. Thanks, Paul. We'll copyright it. Trademark it even. Yeah, and as Amon asks, what about that Amber Starlight being abandoned somewhere in Altus Plateau? Yeah, at first I was like, that might be a demigod's fate, that might not. It has a speculative language. But now after seeing this trailer and being told like Miquella actually literally abandoned his fate, I was like, wait a second. What if that is Miquella's fate? Do we give Miquella's fate to Celavis and then he tries to have Ronnie drink it? That probably has like a bunch of interesting implications worth considering, but they probably really go nowhere because we don't know if Ronnie can even physically drink a potion, or if she tries to drink it and just like gets pissed off, or if she doesn't even bother trying to drink it whatsoever and talks about our stanky ass breath for lying. Hey, Doggy Daycare. I like the name. Welcome on into the stream. Clown thinks Saint Trina could be going rogue now, and you thought that was interesting, the possibility of them becoming their own being. Yeah, because if Radigan kind of becomes his own being, maybe we could have something similar to the Trina situation going on. So y'all heard it here via Twitter first that, you know, Saint Trina is going to be the McKellen boss. It's going to be the Radigan to Marika as Saint Trina is to Miquella. Pixie says, has the trailer nudged me in the direction that the Golden Order started when Marika became God? I mean, I've always been on the fence about it, but I'm still on the fence about it. Like I mentioned earlier in the stream, at first when I did think that there was the possibility that Marika was pulling out the Rune of Death, I was like, oh shit, maybe this is actually the start of the Golden Order. But now, like looking back at it, I'm like, I don't actually think this is the plucking of the Rune of Death. But to be fair, and to be critical of myself here, I will go ahead and pull up the email which accompanied the announcement of the trailer here. So, just to be critical of myself, witness the tyranny of Mesmer's flame, blah, blah, blah. Marika's golden order was birthed from shadow. Mesmer's flame purged the lands. Miquella would abandon grace in pursuit of something greater. Will you walk with him? So my first knee-jerk reaction is like, oh, okay, maybe that does mean the golden order started here. But then I was thinking about it in that if we go back to the actual trailer and we're told like this is potentially the moment when Shadow is born, do we actually see the plucking of the Rune of Death? Because we're told that's when the Golden Order starts, but we don't actually see that based off of like the signs of the Rune of Death that we know of so far. So that part is a little bit ambiguous, but setting that aside, how did I phrase it earlier? I'm kind of like blanking out for a second here. Let me pull up my footage for the trailer. I need more folders open, apparently. Okay. So...
Gold fair, an affair from which gold arose.
So a rose comes from, like, was born, produced, birthed, etc. in Japanese, and... yeah.
And so too was Shadow born.
And so if this is when Shadow is born, wouldn't you first need something to have been born for something else to be birthed from said thing? So I kind of am still on the fence, ultimately speaking. But, you know, I'm definitely willing to entertain the alternatives here. Oh yeah, you noticed the typo with tyranny? It's tragic. Low effort studio. Speaking of low effort, I mean, we're the ones doing like all the ad campaigning at this point. Smart. Mao thinks America should be associated with life more than death. As for her dialogue in the mountaintops of the giants, as if she's proclaiming her age being one of life. Yeah, I agree with that. But my point is, if the symbol for Radagon can be inverted, and if the symbol associated with America can be inverted, and if that symbol is associated with life, and the inversion of life is death, then is inverting America's symbol also supposed to be symbolic of death? Maybe there's a bit of a duality present in America's ascension to godhood that may have been removed later on, is kind of like the point that I'm making with the Golden Order stuff and the Rune of Death stuff. And so, yeah, just to give like a bit of another comparison point, I don't necessarily think America's rune should be like split into two, and I don't think Radagon's rune should technically be split into two with like the litany stuff and like the sacred waves of gold or whatever it's called with the Elden Beast attack and the sacred relic blades attack. It's Ash of War, but nonetheless, in the Golden Order Greatsword, we've kind of got like two rune arc looking things coming from it. So I was like, maybe you could say that this is more like America's Sword Seal depiction, and this could be like the opposite end of it. So if you like flipped this part down, this could like represent death perhaps of like the America stuff. And then this could be like the life stuff down here at the bottom. But I don't know how I feel about that. Lex asks, what proof do we have that life and death are a cycle at all? Boy, am I gonna get you right here. Poison Mist, quote, those who dwell within poison know rot all too well. The death that begets life, that comes to all equally. That is to say, it is the cycle of rebirth put into practice. And rebirth here comes from essentially like the Japanese word for samsara here, Rune. If you guys are familiar with like Naruto, it's like the Rune of like Rinnegan. Gan means I. So Rune, samsara, cycle of death and rebirth, being reborn, reincarnation, etc. So that's kind of why I say that stuff very confidently. So I definitely don't mind that you asked me that question, because it's really easy to forget like what I should substantiate a bit more. So if you guys do have questions, legitimate ones, and you just like want to follow along a bit better, or if something doesn't add up, please feel free to ask questions. I definitely appreciate it, because I would much rather everyone be on the same page. So that way you can like pick apart my theories when they don't hold up and like cause me to like rethink my stuff as well. This is the most Metal Soul shot ever. Yeah, Stella says, you don't think just saying gold necessarily means the Golden Order. So if you guys are like coming in the stream after the fact, I have wondered now, since in Japanese, the Erdtree is just called Golden Tree. I'm typing gold instead of Erd. So one of the ancient Erdtree incantations. Yeah, so these characters right here are gold. They are like what's used here, so it's golden tree. So gold here could mean gold tree. It could mean golden order. I am willing for it to be either one, but nothing is conclusive yet, despite everything, which is why this trailer is so great. We can continue to pull our hair out for another 30 days. As for Mao, your comment there, I don't think you can have an age of death without life in it. I think there was a balance before. And I also think there was a certain amount of balance even in Marika's beginning of her reign. And I think that balance was the age of abundance because the Erdtree's sap and its blessings ran out, which is kind of a normal course of life. And then I think it was altered after the fact to make the Erdtree and her age immortal by cutting out death. So that way it would become an age eternal. Now, I would disagree with your assessment that it's talking about the Order of Rot because it isn't exactly talking about Rot specifically. It's using Rot as an example of what I would consider a universal constant, relatively speaking here, like a principle of the universe here. So I'll pull it back up for us. Those who dwell within poison know rot all too well. The death that begets life, that comes to all equally. That is to say, it is the cycle of rebirth put into practice. I can definitely see why you would say that this is talking about rot specifically. But to be fair, I think this principle is extended beyond poison mist in the remembrance of the regal ancestor. Or even the ancestral spirit horn is good enough. A number of new growths spud from the antler-like horns of the fallen king, each glowing with light. Thus does new life grow from death, and from death one obtains power. And then, going back to the remembrance, ancestral spirits exist as a phenomenon beyond the purview of the Erdtree. Life sprouts from death as it does from birth. Such is the way of the living. So, I think the Erdtree kind of hijacks that cycle by having death get filtered into the Erdtree and like it recycles the life in a different form, whereas I think life sprouting from death was the original more natural way of the world, which is why the spirits try to like avoid the Erdtree essentially. But I appreciate where you're coming from there. And hold on, let me go ahead and hydrate real quick. And yeah, as Drew Wing says, maybe this will be a good item to bring up in conjunction with all this other stuff. So, Memory of Grace says, it is merely a cycle, stand before the Elden Ring, become the Elden Lord. To be fair, it doesn't necessarily like literally mean cycle as far as the Japanese goes, but I think this is a good localization regardless. It says like it merely repeats, but I mean like things that repeat can be described as a cycle. But anyway, just trying to, you know, be fair to like my own points and try to give you guys ammo to use against me because it's more fun that way. So, okay, let me substantiate that a bit more. So even though this talks about the cycle, it doesn't necessarily say anything about life and death, to be fair, but I think the idea of cycles being intrinsically linked to the Elden Ring and all that stuff, to me, kind of signifies a type of earlier cycle that is no longer cycling, which is what we are tasked to fix with our duty as a Tarnished to become Elden Lord. So, of course, that's just my interpretation of it there. V-Limit says, somewhere in this trailer, something on the same level as Radagon's hair turning gold is hidden. You just know it. So, I mean, we did point out, if we're going to talk about hair specifically, there's the possibility that Messimer's hair is like part blonde, part red. Although this could be like a lighting thing because it almost seems to change. Yeah, I don't know how I feel about it. So, yeah. Yeah, it seems like a little bit more blonde earlier, and then like when he moves this way, it becomes a bit more red. So I'm just assuming it's light until shown otherwise. Waves ask, if Merrick has the power to make a rune or grace, then just what is the Elden Beast and when did it arrive? I wish I could begin to answer that question. Yeah, I just don't feel like we have enough ways to like answer that, unfortunately. I don't know. Drew Wang says, you feel like we might learn that the Elden Ring is not quite as all-encompassing as we think. Yeah, so this is an idea that I brought up quite a lot over the last few months, in that I definitely don't think the Elden Ring was nearly as powerful as it is now as it was in the past, because of descriptions like Protection of the Erdtree, which says that the Elden Ring became the Erdtree became the embodiment of order through war and subjugation, something like that. Did I protection? In the beginning, everything was in opposition to the Erdtree, but through countless victories in war, it became the embodiment of order. So if the Erdtree always housed the Elden Ring as far as the Erdtree existed, then how could it have not been the embodiment of order as soon as it came into being? Is I think a really important question we should ask ourselves. And then of course, as I highlighted a lot in my last video about the grace of old, because the Elden Ring didn't exactly seem to fetter the fate in the night skies when Ranala was active. She was able to chase her fate in the stars, and she met her moon, which suggests to me the Elden Ring didn't really control the fate in the night skies to the degree that it does now back then, which is kind of corroborated in the telescope description, which says it was fettered by the Golden Order and or potentially Radahn shackling it. But I guess Radahn isn't necessarily the Elden Ring either. The telescope description does bother me, and I do think there's a possibility that Radagon himself may represent the Golden Order. And we just ultimately don't know when the Rune of Death was removed, which is quite vexing. So my initial reactions to this trailer was oh, maybe we just witnessed the removal of the Rune of Death and thus the creation of the Golden Order. But as I've said before on the stream, now I don't think I can really take this as the Rune of Death yet. So I'm still on the fence. Pigsy feels like the only important part of the trailer is the America stuff. Dennis Carr, welcome on in. And Sion, or is it Swan? Could the grotesque people that look like Rykard's sword be the people who have been given Erdtree burial, becoming part of the tree just like they become part of Rykard's sword if he eats them? That's a fantastic question. Yes, I didn't mention it on this stream, but on the first one, yeah, when I initially saw this, I just thought of the Blasphemous Blade and the Rykard stuff. And then I did point out that there's a lot of parallels between Rykard and the Erdtree, because Rykard eats people to become his quote-unquote family. And when you look at the Blasphemous Blade and his body, there's a bunch of tendril arms and hands coming out of him, which are supposed to represent the champions that he's consumed and whatnot. And when you look at things like the ulcerated tree spirit or the roots of the Erdtree and the catacombs and whatnot, you've got a bunch of similar visual stuff going on here. So I'm going to pull up a picture of the roots and then the ulcerated tree spirits to kind of exemplify that. So yeah, I think there's a lot of visual parallels with this. And then for the ulcerated tree spirit, I don't know if I have a good picture because I don't want to switch footage for this. So you kind of have the tendril things going on here. This is not the best picture. Oh, appendages. Okay, so yeah, this is kind of a good thing. So I think this looks like the stuff going on with the Blasphemous Blade and Rykard. And I will show a picture of Rykard as well. Oh, no, that's the snake face. Okay. Okay, I don't have a picture, but I know I have footage, so I'm going to have to... It's really clear when you, like, see Tanith next to his corpse. So, yeah, this is, like, a legitimate hand, and then we have, like, the almost ulcerated tree spirit tendril stuff coming out of it to compare. So I do think there are a number of parallels with that. Dennis thinks what Marika's doing is like, it's becoming Marika's Great Rune. Maybe. I've wondered that as well, because that would track for a lot of things. Like, if Marika becomes a god, she might need her Elden Rune to do it. So I've definitely considered that as a possibility. I think it might be pretty likely. Yeah, no, I definitely think the Elden Ring predates the Erdtree as well. Wave said, you feel like if Marika had a hand in creating the Erdtree, it'd be mentioned or glorified in some way, which makes you think she didn't. How do you feel about like the sword monuments, which say like giants battle, like trolls betray, all for like the glory of the Erdtree or something like that? Do you wish there was like more relevance with Marika? And or how do you feel about Melina's spoken echoes of Marika in the first church of Marika in the consecrated snowfield, where she tells Godfrey to brandish the Elden Ring for the age of the Erdtree? Drycola, welcome on in. You think it's the Glowmide Queen's corpse Marika's taking the grace from, because she's referred to as an Empyrean. So this kind of like leads into another series of questions. I don't remember if we've brought it up on stream yet here, but if you think the Glowmide Queen had the Elden Ring, that's one thing. If you think the Glowmide Queen has grace, which is not the Elden Ring, that's another. And the grace thing is a little bit less contradictory, which is perfectly fine. I don't know how I feel about like the idea of grace coming from the Glowmide Queen, but either way, we don't really see the Rune of Death. So I feel like maybe there still is a big contradiction. So if the Glowmide Queen has the Rune of Death, and the Rune of Death was plucked from the Elden Ring upon the creation of the Golden Order, then it would imply the Glowmide Queen and her rune were in the Elden Ring, and so therefore the Glowmide Queen should have a closer relationship to the Elden Ring than like your average Empyrean, perhaps. And so does that mean the Glowmide Queen was the vessel of the vision? Maybe. So if the Glowmide Queen was the vessel of the vision, she was the god, did Marika kill a previous god to become a god herself? Is that the kind of betrayal that's going on? Is there something going on with Empyreans? Because even though Marika's a god now, she still is kind of referred to as an Empyrean in, I think, like Malekith set or something like that. You did not say that? Sorry. I misread. Oh, you don't think. My fault. Sorry. Maybe chat scrolled and it like I just read the next word. My fault. No, Pigsy, I'm keeping my power level hidden about the correct theory. Red Knight, nice to see you again. And Kyle, I don't remember if I said hello. Seems logical that the Glowmide Queen had the Elden Ring, no? Well, then the question is, like, what the hell is the relationship between the Glowmide Queen and Marika? And when did that happen? Because if the Glowmide Queen had the Rune of Death before the beginning of Marika's order, that's kind of all honky-dory for the most part. But if the Rune of Death was removed later, what does that say about the Glowmide Queen and Marika's relationship? Does that necessarily imply that the Glowmide Queen either is or was Marika or an aspect of her? I think there's a strong possibility despite everything. Maybe there's some relevance to the reason why Marika says Radagon has yet to become a god. Maybe by like killing that god, you become that god. By usurping that god's order, you become a god. So maybe she felt Radagon was turning on her, potentially in the same way that she could have turned on a Glomide Queen. They could have all been like an extended series of an individual being, perhaps. I know like a lot of these ideas aren't very attractive, but it's just trying to reconcile this kind of mess of information that we do have in the game. Which, it kind of sucks to extrapolate that much, but I don't know if you can really avoid it, no matter one's perspective on the matter. Hey, Rex West, welcome on in. The Glomide Queen will not appear in the DLC. Who wants to bet? I will not be betting. Yeah, and I've wondered that as well, as Mal asks or says, you wondered if before the Erdtree there were various gods, each with their own runes and orders. I have wondered whether or not Melinia's rune originally came from the outer god of Rot, and or whether or not Radagon's rune could have come from like the fire giants. But then like, I don't know, it gets a bit more messed up because we don't exactly kill outer gods to get like the mending runes for the tarnished. Like the tarnished with being like references to Fia, Dung Eater, and Gold Mask. So I don't know. No, I appreciate you like pointing me out misreading it because I don't want to do that. So yeah, you're definitely welcome for doing that. And then Drycola thinks the Glomide Queen got defeated after Marika became a god. And so if Marika became a god, but the Glomide Queen was still alive, then it could imply that the Rune of Death was still within the Elden Ring when it was under the possession of Marika. Which might be a possibility, because it isn't necessarily guaranteed that the Glomide Queen had control of the Rune of Death directly. She might have just been like intrinsically tied to it somehow that we don't know. Hey, Buck, you think that in the trailer, the switch of Saint Trina, where Fate is involved, is because she's the Empyrean, would explain the more definitive form of Fate in Japanese? Oh yeah, maybe I didn't fully finish my thought that I was stealing from Crunchy in that, with the kind of multifaceted personalities of the Empyreans, then if Miquella abandoned his fate, could that imply that his fate was to become Saint Trina, perhaps in the same way Ranni would have been fated to become controlled by the Two Fingers, or the way that Millicent could have been fated to become something other than herself if we followed through with Gowry's plan. I don't know. Rax thinks the Glomide Queen will be resolved in a sequel. All right, we'll have to wait and see, man. Hey, Ash King, nice to have you in again. How's it going? Do you think there's a chance that Miyazaki would ever honestly answer a lore question from like a YouTuber? Maybe. I feel like Miyazaki would definitely neither confirm nor deny some things, but in between the lines probably reveal a lot of other information that might be valuable to piecing things together. And V-Limit says, it is still worth remembering that Radahn needs to be killed to access the DLC with all the Fate talk. Yeah, that is a good point. Thanks for bringing that back up. Dirty Bird. I don't like that name. I know a few Dirty Birds myself. Welcome into the stream. Marika is known to use her lords to commit genocide, but the one she didn't kill was Rennala. She gave her the 3 kids that could bring about a new age. You think she did the same to the Glomide Queen to win? And that's like another really big possibility. Did Marika have a bunch of children or relationships before Godfrey? Maybe. Could so this is kind of like a funny theory that some people have already like posited already, in that maybe what happened with Rads and Rennala wasn't the first time such a situation has happened in the history of the Lands Between. Maybe Marika used Rads to riz up the Glomide Queen, and hence the seduction and the betrayal. So it's all a cycle. It's confirmed here in the Memory of Grey Skies. That's exactly what happened. Mao, I've read your stuff, so I don't always read everything out loud because I can't like address everything that everybody says all the time. Sorry, man. But I appreciate you repeating yourself in case I do miss a comment. Okay, So I'm gonna potentially like finish the trailer again and then maybe move into timdiggity's video on. Let's go with the Miquella is Melina video first because it might be kind of funnier before everything else, and then maybe look at his analysis of the trailer, and then depending on times, maybe another one. Okay. Waves ask, is America ever referred to as an Empyrean? Indirectly, yes, in something relating to Malekith stuff. I'll pull it up for chat. I don't remember the exact wording, which is why. That's not it. It might be easier to look up Empyrean, to be honest. Yeah, I think Empyrean has less results. Emperor. I lied. But anyway, it'll be easier to look for this. Because as soon as I see anything relating to, what's his face, I'll know. Okay, I can skip all the dialogue portions. Remembrance of the Black Blade. Malekith was a shadowbound beast given to his Empyrean. Marika's sole need of her shadow was a vessel to lock away destined death. Even then, she betrayed him. So yeah, between the reference to betrayal at the beginning of this trailer and shadows, and then the betrayal mentioned here to her shadowbound beast who locked away the shadow of death, really gets the gears turning for me. So can't wait to find out more. Wave says, she must be an Empyrean at that stage of the story, right? Not a god yet. So the time that, look, depending on how one reads this, the way that I think is the most natural to read the Remembrance of the Black Blade was Marika's sole need of her shadow was a vessel to lock away destined death. We don't actually know when exactly destined death was sealed, other than after the Night of the Black Knives, when Ranni had already stolen a fragment of it. And part of the reason I say that is, well, it's commonly thought that Malekith would have taken the Rune of Death and put it into his blade, and therefore like sealed it. Once the Rune of Death was removed from the Elden Ring, it's never written that way explicitly, and then there might also be an added layer of ambiguity in that sealing it into his sword might be one thing, versus sealing the sword into his flesh could be a different form of sealing entirely. So it's pretty rough to give you a better read on things here, but Malekith himself says he sealed the blade into himself so that no one would steal it again. So that leads me to believe like the actual sealing of the Rune of Death, most specifically, would probably be referencing after the Night of Black Knives, because that would tie into the way that Malekith says, like, Marika, why wouldst thou gull me? Why shatter? Implied the Elden Ring. So that kind of is what makes the most sense to me. And with that being said, this would have all happened well after Marika would have been a god. So I think even though Marika is still a god, she's still like an Empyrean. And that could go back to like one of my favorite analogies of like squares and rectangles, where like all squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares. So like all gods are Empyreans, but not all Empyreans are gods, I guess. Might be one way to read all of this. And Mal asks about Malekith being Marika's half-brother. So the term used, it doesn't like literally mean half-brother. It's kind of like a sworn brotherhood, like kind of like, I don't necessarily say like a legal one. I don't remember, half-brother. And this is the same term that's used for Blythe in his thing. So as far as like Japanese goes, for anybody who may be curious or like a little bit more familiar with it, there's words that, how do I explain this? So there are words in Japanese where it can be pronounced one way and have multiple kanji to represent different nuances of that word. So as far as the way that Malekith is called America's so-called half-brother in the English, the Japanese uses ototo. So this is like another way to read this. So like you can read this as gite here, but oops, it's also ototo, and this is like the more like natural reading in my opinion for this context for Malekith's armor set here. So well, the English here of Jisho says brother-in-law. It's okay, but like younger stepbrother is okay, but sometimes it's easier, maybe not easier, but like the best thing to do is like use the native dictionary to get a more nuanced reading of things. So it's like they're saying like they're the equivalent of like siblings, like brothers, but it isn't always like family related. So, and it's not family related, not always like blood related is kind of what we're going with here. And of course, like this is ototo, so it's like a younger brother, not an older brother. And so that's kind of what's going on here. So whether or not you want to say like brother-in-law or stepbrother, the main point is they're not like blood related, which I mean, I would almost say shouldn't come as a surprise in Elden Ring, but I mean with the alleged ability of people or dragons to turn into people, why couldn't Marika with her shapeshifting ass have been like a beast man or even like a dragon in the past? I think those are like all fair questions to bring up. And just to give you like the direct text from which this comes, we have the Malekith set. So the loyal brother. Yeah, here we go right here. And if we look this term up, we get it reappearing in Iji's dialogue about Blythe. So he says Blythe is Lady Ranni's stepbrother. So this is probably just like an inconsistency in the localization, probably because these were done at very different times and they didn't like think about the context of the other time it appeared. And so Blythe is to Ranni what Malekith is to Marika, which should be pretty obvious there. Kyle says, yeah, it seems like Malekith wielded death in the blade and then he sealed the blade into himself. But even while he was wielding it, it seemed to be removed from the Elden Ring. Right, exactly. And so, like, which sealing of destined death is, like, the real proper sealing? Is it being sealed into the blade? Or is it when destined death, as the blade, gets sealed into Malekith's flesh? So, hey, Pantheon 000, welcome on in. You find it so weird that the only people Miquella can manipulate are the downtrodden, almost like a Luciferian figure that shows up when you're the weakest as a savior. I love all of the scheming ideas behind Miquella, because there's so many people like, oh no, Miquella's not evil, please don't let him be evil, and other ones are like, nah, he Griffith, trust, you know? So I just love the back and forth. Hey DJ 2K, welcome on in, how's it going? Yeah, Playground Blood Brothers. That's a pretty good way to talk about it, Drew. Yeah, they're kind of like homonyms, but not exactly. I know there's like a proper term for it, but I'm kind of like spacing out, to be honest. And welcome back to the stream, Anticipated. All right. Okay. I'm a little bit done on the talking. I need a lot more water, so I'm going to like watch the trailer again, like from the parts that we were talking about, and then look at somebody else's video so I could rest a little bit. Shadow of... Alright, so we were like halfway through. Actually, we were like longer because we saw the Miquella stuff, didn't we? Oh, maybe we were like at the end. Oh yeah, because I was talking about Trina. Okay.
His blinding strength. Even his fate. But we are not deterred. We choose to follow.
I just realized, even though I like spent all that time talking about like the homonym stuff, I didn't actually explain why it was a homonym. So sorry, I'm going to be pedantic for anybody who's actually like curious. So as I said, this is Ototo, but if you like look up Ototo, So actually, it's right here. This character literally means Ototo, and this is like the most like basic form of it. So when you just see this character on its own to be understood as Ototo, you understand that it's younger brother. Whereas this is read the exact same way as this word is pronounced, but because this uses a specific set of kanji, it has a different nuance of younger brother to being like younger brother in a non blood relation kind of way. So sorry, I didn't fully make that point a moment ago. All right, I'm going to back up the trailer a little bit and remind myself to actually get clean footage of it.
We choose to follow. Will you walk with us?
The music's so good right there. Yeah, when I was watching Ratatosker's reaction to this, I was trying to like bait Crunchy into like saying something, and then he like eventually did it. He probably didn't see my comment, but like even Ratatosker started baiting him into it. He's like, "Oh man, the music's so good. I wonder if it wasn't done by Kitamura." And he's like, "Hey Crunchy, how do you feel about that?" And then Crunchy like went off. It's like, Kitamura sucks. And then Ratatosker's chat's like, "What? Kitamura doesn't suck." And so they like spent so much time talking about it. I just absolutely loved the vitriol because I'm not the biggest fan of a lot of songs in the Soulsborne titles, and there has been a common throughput for me personally that those tended to be Kitamura's songs, with some exceptions here and there. And the way that I look at it is, I think Kitamura makes perfectly reasonable ambient music, and I really feel like she flounders when making themes for like characters or locations that aren't like meant to be ambient, because they just tend to become a bit too noisy for me, or I'm trying to think of the right word. I'm just failing to do it. Crunchy described it as meandering based off of like what somebody else said in chat. I typically use the word bombastic, but like noisy kind of works in a different way. It's just like there's not a lot of like breathing room. It doesn't lead into like different sections of the songs. So like nothing gets to stand out because it all blends together. And so I have a really hard time remembering a lot of Kitamura's tracks specifically, whereas like Sakuraba and Saito's tracks stand out a lot more for me. And so, yeah, this track here, like Ratatosker's like, "Oh, maybe Kitamura didn't do this one." And then Crunchy's like, "I can only hope." And then Rex hopes in chat that Kitamura did do some tracks. So yeah, for anybody who doesn't know, Kitamura was like the lead composer for Elden Ring and Dark Souls 3. And then she had just recently like left FromSoft. So people were wondering if her work would also show up in the DLC or not. Has no melodic movement, maybe. Yeah, oh yeah. As Wave said, you think that the ramparts in the city that are being burnt by Mesmer are also the ones in the crumbling castle. Yeah, I agree. I just didn't take the time to like pull them up. But I am pretty sure that they're probably the same, which would make sense because it seems like if that was like the pre-Erdtree civilization and Mesmer is sacking this place and the other place is like also crumbling, that they probably have a lot of similarities. No melodic clarity. Maybe I don't think clarity is the right word. Maybe like distinctiveness is a better word, which is very similar to clarity, don't get me wrong, but I feel like in the context of music, like you can definitely identify like a lot of the individual parts of the music, but it just doesn't mesh cohesively into a whole for me. It just kind of like meshes in a bad way. Rex says Kitamura is the reason Dark Souls 3 has the best FromSoft score. I don't know, man. I feel like Dark Souls 3 has some of the worst stuff. Just because it becomes so damn formulaic and bombastic that it just kind of all bleeds together as one like unit to me, rather than like individual tracks and themes, with a few exceptions here. And I don't remember like what composer worked on each track. Like I think Slave Knight, well, this is kind of a lie. Like I don't really like Slave Knight Gale's theme that much, the basic form of it, but I absolutely love like the solo piano form of it. And that's kind of like emblematic of my problem with Kitamura's songwriting. It's like as soon as she brings in the full orchestra, it quickly devolves into a meandering mess for me, as opposed to like her ambient stuff, which I think is pretty good. Like I love Khalid. I will defend like Khalid all day long for absolutely setting the tone of what the hell Khalid is. Like it feels like you're standing next to a freaking beehive. Like, and that's the feeling you get being in Khalid. Absolutely perfect for what it is. But Sekiro, I hate certain tracks on Sekiro because it has like too much going on. Like the place in Senpo Temple where the combat music has people chanting when you're fighting monks who have been chanting the entire time. Oh my god, it just makes me so like frustrated. Even though like now I know like the layout of the area, I was just so paranoid of like hearing this chanting in this area because of the music. Yeah, Sekiro is like extremely bland to me, and I don't know how much of that is Kitamura versus like the style that they were going with, or even just like the very much more traditional like Japanese songwriting used throughout it. But anyway, that's off on a completely different tangent there. Clown loves Osiris theme. Michael Dub loves Gale's theme. Ash King says, what happened to Quaylog's channel was so terrible. Such cases always awakens feelings of anxiety that you can get into the same situation and you can't control it. Yeah, for real. And like, for anybody who's like on her Discord, her mod said that like she already lost over 1,000 subs in 3 hours, which might not sound like a lot for YouTube subs, but I think it should also be contextualized that her channel is like pretty small. I don't remember how many subs she had, but it might have been like somewhere between 100 to 200,000, probably less. I don't remember. And so like that's actually a really significant chunk, because you also need to remember that those are like so-called active subs. Like those are the people who saw it and they're like, no, I don't want this in my feed, as opposed to people who are like have like inactive accounts. So it really is a really big deal. And I just feel really terrible for her. I hope it gets resolved as soon as possible. Yeah, so for anybody who did not get the PSA, if you suddenly got an influx of Tesla videos in your recommended feed, that's probably because you may have been subscribed to Quaylog's YouTube channel. It got hacked and has been like all of her videos have been replaced by like Tesla bullcrap, and it's called Tesla Live or something like that. So maybe don't unsubscribe, or don't be like me and click don't recommend this channel because you didn't realize what was going on. It might get fixed hopefully soon, but yeah, it's just awful. It happened today. Like what a time. Like a brand new Elden Ring trailer gets dropped and your channel gets hacked. I feel horrible for her. And Teen Sith, I think, was saying on the Discord earlier, like the same stuff happened to Linus Tech Tips' second channel like a year or so ago. I kind of remember hearing about that, but I didn't know the details. I remember him like being in his underwear when he got the alert and like tried to figure it out. Corporate said someone else named Simon Whistler had a channel that got hacked and swapped it over to a crypto farm scheme, but his team got his account back. Yeah, so that's exactly what's going on with Quaylog now. They're trying to like scam people with fake Bitcoin giveaways. You're watching her stream earlier today. Yeah, I think Mr. Yada said he was actually watching her VOD when it got like taken down. Hey Santeria 1911, nice to see you again, my man. And Maverinth, welcome on in. No, it's okay. Nobody ever has to apologize for like missing part of the stream. I know how life can be. All right, so yeah, that was the trailer. Thank you all for like joining me on that secondary analysis, and giving me comments, whether that be constructive or just like pushback. They're all welcome. So, man, I am parched. Did a lot of talking today. So, with that being said, let's go ahead and check out a video and like go back into like some other lore adjacent studies. So let's pull up. Okay. Hold on. Let's do. Oh, I see. Okay. Whoops.
A great ancient dragon.
Stop. Stop YouTube. What is going on? Okay, hold on. I'm going to do this. I put it in the wrong playlist. So let me take this out of this playlist. There we go. So that should be fixed. Let's go back. And this one.
The quest for...
Okay. Got it. All right, so this is a video that's kind of been popping off recently, and I'm very curious to see how it's going to stand up in the wake of the news released today with the trailer from earlier. So timdiggity is, I believe, a pretty much brand new YouTuber, so it's really awesome to see somebody's like first video pop off the way that it has. So congrats to him. I'm gonna try to like be fair to him and his theories here, and if like this is somebody's first video, I also do try to offer as constructive feedback as I can on like the editing process. So as always, my critiques are meant to be constructive and not to tear people down, even if I am pretty critical at times. I try to be as fair as possible, and I would always welcome anybody to do the same to me. So, all right. timdiggity, if you're still in chat, hope you are ready. And if you're not, totally understandable. So, all right. Miquella is Melina, Elden Ring DLC Speculation by timdiggity, y'all.
Hey, so recently, Souls lore YouTubers Ratatosker and Smotown did a podcast episode together to talk about Elden Ring's upcoming DLC. While discussing some other lore channels, Ratatosker said this.
I've come to the point where I'm like, what I need is schizos. That's what I need. I need crazy people with their far out theories, just crazy theories that, and maybe some of them are unlikely, but that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. they're throwing things at the wall and seeing what sticks. I want to see. I'm going to see their theories.
Well, I agree. And so I wanted to make this video because I have a theory that kind of goes against popular opinion, and I've hardly seen it anywhere else. And the more I look into it, the evidence seems obvious to the point where
I love that the evidence seems obvious stuff. I guess I should also state that right now I'm currently an avid hater of the Miquella is Melina theory for no other reason than just feels. I really don't have like too strong of an opinion about this, other than I think like we've seen enough imagery of Miquella in other contexts with the DLC even before like today's trailer, where I'd be very highly skeptical of this. But even with all that being said, like Ratatosker, I do like hearing really wild and out there theories, letting people in my chats cook to see what they have to say, taking it seriously, even if I don't think it all works out and is always logically consistent. I think even when things are logically inconsistent, we can still gain a lot of insight or new appreciation for things that we may have taken for granted. So that's kind of why I like doing this stuff as like a lore tuber or whatever, just like a dude looking at videos passionate about lore and stuff, because it's just kind of fun for me. He sounds like Sean Hanners. I don't know if that's a compliment or an insult, man. Embrace madness? Yeah, for real. Dennis Carr's favorite theory is that the player character is Miquella after he brainwashed himself. All right, here we go.
expecting it to be confirmed in the DLC. So here's my schizo theory. Melina is Miquella, or at least some sort of spirit projection of him. Let me break it down for you. To start, we need to talk about Saint Trina. Saint Trina is an enigmatic figure.
Those are some pretty solid transitions for a first video as well.
Mentioned throughout the game. There are only a few item descriptions that mention her by name. Every item that mentions her...
Oh, okay, Tim is still here. I missed your comment. Thank you. Yeah, don't be afraid to be critical. All right, appreciate it. And yeah, thanks for sticking around, and also like being around for both of my streams today about the trailer and whatnot. Even if you weren't like strictly paying attention, nonetheless, it's cool to have like content creators. I absolutely love it with like you, Crunchy, V-Limits, and Moxie. Kite Tails have visited. It's I really like that with Elden Ring, especially like the lore community is coming like closer together and coming up with new theories and bouncing things off of each other and growing because of that. It's kind of like one of the main things that I really wanted to happen as a byproduct of creating my channel, just kind of broadening the discourse surrounding the games.
Is directly related to sleep. The Sword of Saint Trina's description states, "Some say she is a comely young girl, others are sure he is a boy." This duality is also seen in the Miquella's Lily and Trina's Lily items, which look strikingly similar. Now, there's obviously...
Interesting. So let me back that up, because my impression is, and I might have like spaced out slightly there, that you would be saying that the unalloyed gold lily would be more physical and this would be more dreamy. I like that idea. I do.
Some say she is a comely young girl, others are sure he is a boy. This duality is also seen in the Miquella's Lily and Trina's Lily items, which look strikingly similar. Now, there's obviously...
Okay, you didn't quite say it that way, but that was just like me like spacing out and thinking about what you're saying. Okay.
Some connection between Miquella and Saint Trina, and at this point, it's mostly agreed upon that they're the same person. But as of now, the only clear image we have of Saint Trina's face is an engraving on an item called Saint Trina's Torch.
Oh yeah, I called you out earlier on I think the first stream, because when I was originally making the thumbnail for the other night's video, I noticed that your HUD was still visible when you made your thumbnail, which is just really funny to me. Like as like a content creator and like a editor, like this is the kind of stuff that I like look for the most. Like, oh, where are they tripping up? Where can I see the cracks and where they're working? Not really relevant, but it's just something that I like to notice. Shame, we know your name, right? V-Limit, got him. Notice that way later. That's how it is sometimes. Like I've noticed a couple typos on my videos. I'm like, God damn it. Why? I thought like, because when I make my videos, I rewatch them a lot to try to like look for continuity issues. And whenever I see them, like, how did I miss that? Like I rewatched it so many times, and it just sucks. But I mean, it's just part of the game. Oh well.
Now, if you ask me, I think she looks a lot like Melina. Her hair conceals her face, which brings to mind Melina's hair and hood, and she even has a small mark on her face where Melina's mark is.
Yeah, this is one of the details I liked. You can even kind of see this marking on the statues in Ordina. Where do I have... It's kind of really hard to see. It doesn't look nearly as distinct on this, but this eye does seem to be kind of closed. Hey guys, Miquella is Mesmer. Because I guess like Mesmer's eye is like this too. Yeah, this one's kind of like better, but I mean like the textures of this is a bit rough, or are a bit rough. Yeah, I guess the other picture that I had was the best. Okay. What if Miquella and Melina have the same scar? Oh yeah, so I guess I didn't like finish my thought there. Yeah, I don't think they're the same scar. This one almost kind of reminds me of like an electricity burn with the way that it like branches out. Whereas I feel like Melina's is a bit more distinctively like curved at spots. So I am skeptical of this despite everything, because I have noticed that as well before.
She even has a...
Waves always took Saint Trina's description as being Miquella because of the androgyny that a young child would have, and not that they're two different beings, but the Japanese implies otherwise. Hold on. I'm trying to parse how otherwise fits in your sentence, because it's getting late and I'm like having a bit more trouble keeping track of like syntax right now. So are you asking if the Japanese implies that they're two different beings, or that... Hold on. Androgynous? I'm sorry, I don't understand the question. I don't think this is a you issue. I think this is a me one. So anyway, all right, Stella, I appreciate it. You have a good night. I don't think there was anything super different in the Japanese. I can double check real quick. And wait, which item is it? The torch? Actually, I don't think there's anything about Trina in relation to Miquella. Or are you asking about the adult form? Oh, okay. No, you're probably not talking about the torch at all. It's just like whether he's male or female. Yeah, let me double check because I honestly don't remember. Okay, Sword of Saint Trina. Let me look at the English. No, I mean this looks pretty much exactly the same for the most part. Saint Trina is an enigmatic figure. Some say she's a comely young girl. Others say he is a boy. The only certainty is that their appearance was as sudden as their disappearance. Trina is a mystery, essentially. The sprightly... They say that she's a sprightly girl. They say he's a boy. Suddenly appears and then suddenly disappears. It's said. So, yeah. This is pretty good. Oh, I said the Japanese implies that they're the same? For Saint Trina specifically? I don't think so. I think I've been pretty clear that why I would think Saint Trina and Miquella would be the same is because of like the lilies and the stuff in the cut content rather than that. As far as them being androgynous, my point about Saint Trina is that Saint Trina herself is female presenting because she's called Saint Trina as Seijo. Yeah, Seijo Trina, so like Holy Woman Trina right here. So Saint Trina herself is female presenting, but okay, now I think I understand your question. But I think because Saint Trina is androgynous, people mistake her for either a girl or a boy. Maybe that's answering the question. Okay, yeah, you always took Saint Trina as being Miquella because of the androgyny that a young child would have, and not them being two different beings. Yeah, that's it. Okay, yeah, we're on the same page. I finally understand your question. Sorry, you were asking the question in a bit of a leading way, and I didn't remember like me saying it that way. So okay, we're good. Yeah, no, your interpretation is pretty much the same as mine as to like why people would mistake Saint Trina as a girl or a boy, because I think it's just like androgynous. So yeah. Mao says, you don't think it's fair to judge what the mark looks like on a carving? It's not real skin, so there's no way to represent it on a stone surface. Maybe it's just a crack. Well, to be fair there, I think you shoot yourself in the foot to say it's not fair to judge it on the carving, because you're implicitly judging it by the carving by bringing up the carving to begin with. So, I mean, if you're going to bring up the carving, then we're going to bring up the carving. Rex doesn't think Miquella and Trina are like Merrick and Radigan. The cut content made it clear that it's just Miquella. And like the thing about cut content is that it could have always been cut for a reason. It sucks to say that. I wouldn't be completely surprised if Trina ends up becoming a more developed entity, and I also wouldn't be surprised if it is like the Miquellan dream alter ego. So like there's always been a pretty strong cross-cultural idea that whatever you depict yourself in your dream is kind of like the inner, the truer you. And that could be more true for Miquella, especially because he's kind of stuck with a childlike body. So his mind could have still continued to develop into that of an adult, which might be why Saint Trina is depicted unnervingly as an adult in The Torch, but others recognize Trina as a like younger boy or a girl and whatnot. Correct, Night Scout, and welcome back to stream. Larsel Darsel, welcome in. You think Trina tells us Miquella, but gets physically separated from him when he leaves everything behind? And that is something that I'm considering as well moving into the DLC. And yeah, actually thinking about that idea a bit more. Excuse me. If Miquella abandons if Miquella abandons his flesh and or his fate, and we've seen people who've like lost their flesh get possessed by other things, could something happen to what Miquella has discarded? I wouldn't be surprised if we get a Shabriri-esque situation arise in the Shadowlands as well. Elizabeth Loomis, welcome on in. Yeah, the angels would take the form of a man, but they're technically androgynous because like they're like perfect beings essentially. That's a good point. And they're heavily associated with lilies? Thank you, the angel Gabriel. Davin says, the cut content mentions that Trina could only be found in dreams, right? The adult Trina would line right up with this corpse with his corpse with Mo. I think so. I don't remember everything about Trina in the cut content right now, unfortunately. All right. Going back to the video.
Small mark on her face where Melina's mark is. There's also this strange eye on her head, which could be a representation of Melina's purple eye in the Frenzied Flame ending. After all, sleep items and Saint Trina are strongly associated with this same shade of purple. I think.
So I would question why then does like the placement of the eye change for Melina? Like why isn't there like more of why a central eye instead of something more off to the figure's left side, I guess?
In the Frenzied Flame ending. After all, sleep items and Saint Trina are strongly associated with this same shade of purple. I think this is because Melina is Saint Trina, the female alter ego of Miquella. Speaking of faces, it's interesting that even though Miquella is briefly shown in the DLC trailer, we never see his face. I suspect that when the DLC comes around and we finally get a good look at him, he may have a mark on his eye like Melina. But back to Saint Trina. What's with all the sleep stuff? Well, there's one major instance of sleep in the game, which seems to support Melina being Saint Trina. Before Melina burns herself in the Forge of the Giants, she touches the player's hand. The player then seems to fall asleep, later waking up in crumbling Farum Azula. It's a strange moment that seems to be significant, as Melina is the only character we see with this sort of ability. But there is one more key incident in the game related to sleep.
Ranny. Torrent too, I guess.
When we acquire Torrent and return to the church at the beginning of the game, we find the merchant Kale asleep, surrounded by mist. Ronnie appears and gives us the Lone Wolf Ashes and Spirit Calling Bell, referring to them as a gift from Torrent's former master. But who is she referring to exactly? Well, many people theorize that it was Miquella, based on the fact that Kale is asleep and Miquella has ties to Saint Trina. It's since been confirmed in the promotional image for the DLC that Miquella was Torrent's master at some point.
So I do take umbrage with this because even though that Spirit Seed certainly looks like Torrent because that's how Torrent looks, that isn't necessarily guaranteed to be Torrent specifically. There is the possibility that there are other Spirit Seeds around. kind of like how the Knight Rider horses aren't necessarily all riding the same horse, maybe, or even like the Kite and Sellswords would be riding different horses. So yeah, I think there is a lot of allure to associating like special characters as being like consistent in the representations across media, but I think it's kind of dangerous to make those assumptions with FromSoft games at times. So if this is Miquella or not Miquella, if this is Torrent at some point, that's perfectly fine. But I do think it's just dangerous to make that assumption when it actually has not been what I would consider to be confirmed here. Yada says all the horses look the same to him. You tell you what? Okay. It's interesting that Torrent kind of has omen horns if you think about it. I don't necessarily know if they're omen horns, but they're definitely similar in their styling. Maybe the omen horns are more like Torrent's horns. All right, welcome back, Yalamoth. He certainly is Torrent shaped, therefore Torrent. Why not Torrent if Torrent shaped?
But if Miquella is Torrent's former master, then why does Melina have him in the beginning of the game? I mean, we see plain as day that Melina is riding Torrent in the opening cutscene, and she's the one who gives him to us. So wouldn't that make Melina Torrent's former master? Yes, because they're the same person. Now,
I do think that's a little bit reductive. It could have been possible that Torrent could have had multiple owners, but nonetheless, I mean, I don't think that connection is completely unreasonable either.
You may be thinking, they could both be Torrent's former master and not be the same person.
There we go.
But allow me to be pedantic here for a second.
Ooh-wee, I love it.
Ronnie only appears here after Melina has given you Torrent. Therefore, Ronnie's dialogue referring to Torrent's former master is only accessible if in your game, Melina is no longer Torrent's master. That has to be for a reason. If Ronnie was just referring to Miquella and Miquella wasn't Melina, this dialogue wouldn't be locked behind Melina giving up Torrent.
I don't think that argument fully pans out, because if they are two different people, like Melina could have been the most recent master and you could still kind of make that argument. Or even if like Miquella gave up Torrent first, I mean, that's kind of me just saying the exact same thing in a different way. Yeah, so let's take a moment to theorize, like if Miquella gave up his flesh a long time ago or whatnot, Melina could have come into possession of Torrent and kind of be Torrent's current master, and this could still all work out why we would see Torrent in the promo picture and why Melina could still have him. So I don't think this is quite so cut and dry right here, even though there still could very well be an actual legitimate connection between them. Melina stole Torrent? Yeah, because they're both spectral. And yeah, that's like something I've wondered as well. Like if Torrent is a spectral steed and we see him in the Shadowlands with Miquella, are the Shadowlands part of like the so-called spectral realm? I guess I didn't really mention that too much in the trailer analyses, but I've definitely talked about that on other people's Shadow of the Erdtree original trailer analyses and whatnot. If you look at Torrent's ring, you think it definitely looks like Miquella made it. I could appreciate that viewpoint, yeah. Friend Alex says, but in the spirit of horse pedantry, Torrent seems to be Melina's master in the sense that she is following his lead. Very well. The ball is in your court, Tim. What do you got to say, Tim? Where's he going?
She's referring to Miquella and Melina both, because they're the same person. I mean, they even both ride him in the same strange position, with two legs to one side.
The side saddle.
It's been confirmed that we access the DLC through the cocoon in Mohg's boss arena. When we enter Mohg's boss arena,
Tim is sweating. We got him.
Lifts the hand and addresses it as Dearest Miquella. And in the DLC trailer, we hear a voice say,
Come now, touch the withered arm and travel to the realm of shadow.
So, it seems we will access the DLC specifically by touching Miquella's hand, which hangs out of the cocoon. Now, where else in Elden Ring have we seen this before? When we first access the Round Table Hold, we do so by touching Melina's hand. The Round Table Hold clearly exists separately from the Lands Between in some way, since it can only be accessed by teleporting. I think this is because it exists in the Land of Shadow, or is otherwise veiled in the same way. Ziostorm recently pointed out that the Round Table Hold has veil-like elements in its design, like the golden strands of grace floating above the round table.
Yeah, in 1.0, there was a lot more strands to like make that stuff more obvious. I'm really disappointed that got changed with the updates, because it was probably like my actual favorite thing of the first Round Table Hold. I actually used a lot of maybe not like a lot of it, but I definitely used some of that footage for my last video about the Grace of Old, because it's too evocative not to use. I don't think it turned out super well, because it is kind of faint and hard to notice if you're not looking at it specifically, but you can actually see it like interact with the big Grace a lot more back then. I'm so sad it's gone. Okay. You didn't know that? Oh yeah, no problem. Yeah, I definitely don't expect everybody to know stuff like that. That's just something that I noticed, because I was like, hey, what's going on with the 1.0 version of the game? I heard it's kind of different. And then when I played it, I mean, I definitely enjoyed myself seeing those kind of differences. Like, one of my other favorite differences, although it's kind of like a real pain in the ass, is that when you go to Castle Stormvale, when you fight like the two banished knights in the retail version of the game on like the ramparts, kind of near the closed off place where you get the Godslayer's seal, you will instead fight a freaking version of Elimer of the Briar as like a bell-bearing hunter, and he is legitimately harder than Margaret at that point in the game. It's crazy. Did I see what Jack said? No, I did not. I don't know if you lost the message. The only thing that I saw you send was about the pit of meat is the meteor? You think you think the meteor is what America is interacting with at the very beginning of the trailer. Okay. I don't know, because that doesn't look very meteoric, but I mean, maybe it's a special kind of meteor that's like an organism rather than anything else. But even then, I still think we have like a lot of stuff to reconcile with like Farum Azula's depiction of the Elden Ring, because it seems like the Elden Ring should have been in the Lands Between well before the creation of the Erdtree, if that event is supposed to be the creation of the Erdtree.
And also its icon on the map. I think that Melina, also known as Miquella, has the unique ability to travel through these veils, and they can bring others through as well by touching them.
So about that point of uniqueness, I don't know about that, because then I guess you would need to make the argument that Melina is also responsible for Roderica going into the Round Table Hold and or all of the other Tarnished, which might be true, but I don't know if we can fully make a case for that, because Vari talks about it seemingly being like a Finger Maiden's responsibility rather than Melina, who says she is no Finger Maiden herself. So, not sure how I feel about that. Their names start with the same letter. I like it.
A little deeper into the names of the characters, we can see that Miquella starts with M, and Melina starts with M.
This is the full-on schizo theory posting that I can get behind. I love this stuff because it's like so obvious. Yeah, I understand what you're saying at the beginning of the video now.
These are the same letter, so they must be the same character.
Oh no, you rat bastard man, making such a delicious pun right there. I love it. You got me.
Alright, so if this is Miquella's corpse, then how can he also exist in the Land of Shadow? Well, Elden Ring's demigods are obviously no stranger to having projections or doubles of themselves roaming around, but the way I see...
Oh, I wonder if Crunchy has said anything about this video with the Godfrey thing. He said he's been working on like an hour-long video about Godfrey. That's apparently like his albatross, his white whale. I don't know. I'm really looking forward to that.
The Land of Shadow seems to act as a sort of spirit world. Now, that's a whole topic for another video, and let me know if that's something you'd like to see. But for the purposes of this video, here's what we need to know. A statement released by Bandai Namco states that Miquella entered the Land of Shadows by divesting himself of his flesh. This sounds familiar. Melina tells us early in the game that she is burned and bodiless. She phases in and out of visibility like a spirit, and she has burns on her hands, but we don't know exactly how this happened. We also don't know exactly how Miquella divested himself of his flesh. I think this will be made clear in the DLC, but for now, I think it's possible that Miquella burned himself alive, which gave his spirit access to the Land of Shadow, and Melina is his burned, bodiless form, which he uses to return to the Lands Between in disguise. The DLC trailer...
So about that, I understand where you're going with that, but I might be like getting ahead of myself here. Do you think that the cocoon corpse is actually burned? Because I feel like you need to say that a bit more explicitly if you think that was his original body. Because I feel like, well, it's definitely like shriveled up and weird and gross looking. It doesn't have like what I would consider the more stereotypical signs of being burned quite the same way that is what you can see on Melina's hands there. Tim is a certified Godfrey denier like Ratatosker. Nice.
Ends with this shot of Miquella. I know this is probably just holy light around him, but am I crazy, or does it kind of look like fire?
I do think it is a bit different, but I can see why one would make the argument. You agree? You're thinking it did look burned, but in retrospect, it doesn't really. Okay, no, that's fine. I could totally, support like thinking one thing at one point and then changing your mind. Definitely respectable there. Appreciate that. The Frenzied Flame.
When you proceed along the path to the Frenzied Flame, Melina warns you of the dangers and urges you to reconsider. And we all know what happens in the Frenzied Flame ending. If you do decide to take on the Frenzied Flame, the only way to cure yourself is by using an item called Miquella's Needle, which wards away the meddling of the outer gods. Clearly, both Miquella and Melina have a vested interest in repelling the outer gods, particularly the Frenzied Flame. The reason for this isn't clear, but I hope to get more clarification in the DLC. When it's revealed that they're the same person. Interestingly, in the cut content for the game, there's an item called St. Trina's Crystal Ball. The item description mentions using sleep to calm those affected by the Frenzied Flame. Interesting.
Interesting. All right. Yeah, I'm really sad that stuff got cut. I mean, I really adored the Kale quest line and them splitting off together and kind of like being one and needing like a lullaby to calm them all down, and then like one's anger bubbling and boiling over into another person's and like kind of like becoming a feedback loop for each other. It's just really cool, that kind of like hive mind and that literal blurring of the divide between them as they like kind of reinforce that idea of the one great, I guess. Waves asks, do I think the main game story trailer is showing the Erdtree burning when we see it? So are you talking about like the picture, like the third one that shows up on the opening cutscene? Because I've wondered that, like I just don't know.
Peggy 16.
Peggy 16, y'all. Oh no, this is not. I need the opening one, not the story trailer. So I'm assuming you're talking about this right here. Yeah, I've also wondered whether or not the picture of America in front of the Erdtree on the paintings kind of looks like it's burning. But then when you look at like the trophy icon for something relating to like the Erdtree, it also kind of looks like it's on fire, but not really. I think that's just how the Erdtree looks. It's not giving you the stank eye, that's just how it looks. Pixies never changed their mind about anything because you've always been right about everything, simple as. Does Melina still plead with you if you used her as kindling and then get a hug by the Tres Dedos? No, because if you sacrifice Melina, she gone. Red Knight says, it's going to be so funny when literally all of our theories turn out to be super wrong. We're here for it, but you know, that's how you make content, right? I mean, it's easy to be provocative and wrong. Yeah, no problem, anticipated. Timdiggity does wonder why Melina doesn't say anything about Melina, even if she's not Miquella. Oh no, he's reading my notes that I haven't gotten to yet. My prosecution attempts at a guy. I appreciate that. Yeah, I'll get to it probably when it's a bit more appropriate for like the context of the video. Because I do want you to like make your points, but I also like want to think of the things and not forget them as we go along here. Okay.
Throughout the game, Melina gives us some information on herself. She was born at the foot of the Erdtree, and inside the Erdtree, she was given a purpose by her mother. Many people, myself included, take this to mean she is an Empyrean, born of Marika and Radigan, like Melina and Miquella. But if she's an Empyrean child of Marika, why is she barely mentioned anywhere else in the game? Why is Gideon the all...
To be fair, I think that's pretty rough, no matter what anyone's interpretation of the timeline is, trying to place Miquella, and not Miquella, but Melina, and especially Mesmer now. It's great.
knowing, seemingly unaware of her existence, when he knows about every other major demigod.
The story trailer. Oh, you were talking about the story trailer. Oh, you mean like during the actual shattering. Okay, I can pull that up. Sorry, I didn't read your comment. I forgot about that section. Yeah, I also kind of don't really know about that one. So I did have it right. So like this right here does not look very fiery. Mao says maybe Melina is the fate that Miquella abandoned. Well, he abandoned his flesh. So, I mean, now that we know more about it, I don't want to judge this video based off like the info that we just got, because I feel like it would poke more holes in it. So I do want to like try to base it on the merits of like what we knew at the time. But maybe like once we're all like done with our like base theories, then we can get cut into like the deep lore. So yeah, looking at this right here, it doesn't exactly look like it's on fire so much. Maybe you could argue this thing, or maybe like way up at the top, but yeah, I think that's just kind of like how the Erdtree looks at times. But nonetheless, like the ramparts have like the firing shots being thrown around, so like that stuff there. So if there's smoke, you might be able to attribute it to this thing. Is this thing actually broken in the main game? I don't think it is. They repaired the outer rampart and that stuff. And then it's like really weird that there are like a bunch of like roots on this thing. So that's maybe another reason to be skeptical of like the cinematic trailers and whatnot. Anyway, I'm not analyzing this. Let's go back to the other video. All right, I'm going to back it up again a little bit so that way he could make his point a bit more clearly. In game, it's not broken. Thank you, Ash King. I didn't think so. I felt like I might have remembered that, but seeing one thing look one way kind of like casts doubt. It's all good, Waves. Don't worry about it. It's my fault too. African Surf, welcome on in. Your personal theory has always been that Melina and Mesmer are twins that Marika had before Miquella. Yeah, that's a pretty popular interpretation. Shaman YouTube.
But if she's an Empyrean child of Marika, why is she barely mentioned anywhere else in the game? Why is Gideon the All-Knowing seemingly unaware of her existence when he knows about every other major demigod? Well, because she's just an alter ego of Miquella.
I think that's a really good question about the Gideon thing, especially. I do think it does become a bit leading to frame it with the Miquella reference more specifically, but yeah, it's probably just a good question in general. Like, why the hell doesn't Gideon mention Melina? That might be indicative that she didn't have a big part in the shattering, maybe because she was already bodiless at that point. Not to like ignore what you're saying about your ideas in general here. I'm just kind of like launching off that point.
And Gideon even admits himself.
Miquella is the one thing that remains a mystery to me.
Another thing to note is the whole butterfly theory. If you haven't heard it, basically, there are 3 types of butterflies in the game, which spawned a theory assigning each one to a child of Radigan and Marika. The nascent butterfly seems to represent Miquella, Aeonian represents Millennia, and Smoldering represents Melina. But with the DLC trailer and the reveal of Mesmer, many people now think he is actually the Smoldering butterfly. So where's Melina's? Well, I think she's the nascent butterfly, because she's Miquella. There does seem to be a shot showing pink butterflies in the DLC trailer, so we'll have to wait and see what the deal is there. Also, let's talk about Miquella and Melina's parents really quick. Radigan and Marika are literally 2 individuals occupying one body, one male, one female. It's possible that something similar is occurring with Miquella and Melina. As they say, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree.
Narrative purpose.
Melina's journey serves as the framework of the game's story. Our entire quest revolves around bringing her to the base of the Erdtree. In an interview with IGN, Miyazaki stated that the DLC will be centered around the player tracing Miquella's footsteps. I could see this acting like the DLC's version of the Guidance of Grace, with his footprints pointing to each side of Grace, or whatever the DLC version of them is.
Yeah, it would have been kind of cool, maybe, if you had, like, scarab-type effects. So, the invisible scarabs where you have, like, the footprints. That would have been kind of funny if there was, like, a McKellen version of that. And there still might be, now that I think about it. Yeah.
And seen it speculated that Miquella will personally speak to us at Sites of Grace, like Melina does. Either way, it's obvious that his journey will be the driving narrative of the DLC, much like Melina's journey is in the base game. With Miquella and Melina being the 2 most central characters of the game's narrative, I think their connection and shared identity will be a big reveal in the DLC.
Final thoughts.
Finally, I have a few more thoughts to share that don't really fit into their own section. First off, yeah, I know, people think Melina is the Glowmine Queen. And there is some evidence that she could be. But I don't think that's necessarily incompatible with the theory that she's Saint Trina and
Oh no.
It makes it a bit overcomplicated, sure. But who knows? If I had to pick though...
Alright, so... I think most people would treat that as kind of like a throwaway theory, but even if it is a throwaway theory, I do like to try to see how that could or could not work. So, I think that wouldn't work because I believe the Golden Order would have been established before Miquella was born, which would have necessitated the defeat of the Glowmide Queen to some degree. But since we don't exactly know when the Rune of Death was removed, could Miquella have been born and then Golden Order fundamentalism sprung up? You might be able to argue that Radagon returned to Leyndell, had Miquella and Melina with himself, and then removed the Rune of Death to become Elden Lord. I could potentially see that argument being made. But then I guess you would need to reconcile. Hold on. You would need to reconcile when Miquella's body was burned, because if his body was burned post shattering, this stuff doesn't really work as far as like the Melina being burned by this works, I guess. Because she would have already needed to have been defeated beforehand if she is the Glowmide Queen. Yeah, I just don't think this works. All right, let me check out chat. If Melina showed up every time we rested at a site of grace, her death would be much more impactful to gameplay. I don't know. So like, I understand where you're coming from with that. But I feel like if she literally showed up every time and we were stuck to go through the cutscene, not like the cutscene, but like the pseudo cutscene where you have to wait for her to like materialize, that would probably end up becoming a bit grating and tiring. So I don't know if this could be like an issue of lore concessions to gameplay mechanics, but even with that being said, I do think it is kind of annoying that you don't get the option to just talk to Melina or like choose to level up from Melina at every site of grace. Maybe with the exception of when you would get to Leyndell and she like leaves you temporarily. But yeah, they probably could have changed that around perhaps. Waves thinks Melina has to be special in some way, and she's no mere kindling maiden, in your opinion. We know normal finger maidens can do what Melina does because that's how Bernal reached Farum Azula. Well, not necessarily. Bernal could have come in after us, so you're just kind of working with the framework of the content, I think, maybe. But the base game might not be totally reliant on that world building. Yeah, Kitsune, I did hear that Quelaag got hacked. Yeah, I appreciate the shout out there. So yeah, I did try to make a community post to try to like alert others, and I've talked about it like twice on stream now so far. It sucks. And then Kyle says, isn't he described as Radagon of the Golden Order or something? You always figured that meant he arrived around the time the Golden Order formed. This is a really contentious topic. I'm just trying, like, for the sake of this theory, I'm trying to be as charitable as I can before, like, picking it apart to just see if, like, the most basic aspects of it work before getting into, like, the Japanese stuff and other things that some people might not be familiar with. But yeah, thanks for bringing that up, though. Why does Melina never speak to us the way Latenna does? It could be because she's like actually affiliated with Grace to some degree, but I don't know. Jedediah asks, has there ever been any thoughts on if Melina is the spirit of Vike's maiden? I don't think so, because you could arguably see Vike's maiden in the Frenzy Flame Church, or whatever it's actually called, in like next to the Frenzy Flame Village. But I thought that idea was very interesting for a second there, and then I kind of summarily dismissed it. Maybe you could build on that and like make your own schizo theory for Ratatoskr to fawn over. Night Scout says Bernal would have no means to follow the player character. It requires a finger maiden burning and teleporting or sitting in the forge and not dying. So that that comes into like a question of whether or not us doing that with Melina or the Frenzy Flame means we're opening the door, or if everybody needs their own key to open the door and like we lock it behind us. If that makes sense. Yeah, and Waves thinks Radagon could have created the Golden Order and existed long before, using the ideas he learned from both Merrick and Renala. So yeah, I definitely think the Golden Order should predate Miquella by a fair margin, which complicates the Melina is the Glowmide Queen is Miquella theory crafting here. But that doesn't necessarily discount directly that Melina is Miquella, just that Melina is GEQ is Miquella, perhaps. Okay. Oh, I want to answer Elizabeth's question. You always had this question about Vike's Maiden. Why has she not decayed? Beast Blood, bro, and Golden Poop. So, any chance I get to bring up the Golden Poop is a good time. Gold Tinge. Golden Dung is the kind of cut item, even though it's exact same. Gold Tinged Excrement, quote. Gold-tinged excrement is a highly stable substance. It doesn't dry out, nor does it lose its customary warmth or scent. For better or worse, it remains as it is. And then to add on to that, Beast Blood. This glimmering blood never rots or decays. So yep, like time doesn't really work properly in the Lands Between. That's right, guys. Time is convoluted. Yeah, no problem.
I honestly do think there's more things tying Melina to Miquella than the Glowmide Queen. And I'd like to talk about who I think the Glowmide Queen is in a future video. But for now, we'll just have to wait and see what's revealed in the DLC. Another thing I should note is, I'm not entirely convinced that the arm coming from the cocoon is even Miquella's arm to begin with. Maybe when Moog touches the hand and says, "Dearest Miquella," he's just thinking out loud about Miquella in a broad sense. I mean, Miquella's main thing is that he's an eternal child, and this corpse is like a huge old guy. I know there are theories that he grew himself inside the cocoon, but I don't know. I'm starting to think this character in the DLC trailer could actually be Miquella, and the corpse is just a red herring.
That's funny. It kind of sucks that we just like learned everything about the secondary trailer just a moment ago.
That would kind of go against my theory of Melina and Miquella using their hands to take people to the Land of Shadow, but I wanted to include it anyway. And back to Melina being Miquella, I have two.
All right, I guess I should probably bring it up. So I think now after the second trailer, I think somebody might have mentioned before on the first trailer we got that this dude could be like the knight that we saw by the site of Miquella with like the Miquellan rune that I'm assuming is a Miquellan rune. I was like, I don't know if the cloak fully matches the top of it, but now after checking out the second trailer, I do think this is like the lead knight of like Miquella's Band of the Hawks. Yeah. Okay.
And Miquella using their hands to take people to the Land of Shadow, but I wanted to include it anyway. And back to Melina being Miquella, I have two other quick things that I wanted to talk about. So we all know Miquella created the Halig tree, right? And there seems to be some evidence that he may have created other minor trees as well. Well, when Melina is summoned for the fight against Morgott, she uses a unique spell when she falls in battle. This animation of creating a healing spectral tree.
To be fair, she can cast it without dying, but she will always do it when she does die.
Is not seen anywhere else in the game as far as I know. So there
Correct.
could be some connection there with Miquella and creating trees.
For that theory specifically, I think I could support it more if the tree that Melina created had more of a crossed tree pattern. Damn YouTube. Okay.
Spectral tree.
Yeah, but it just seems to be more like a straight tree, kind of more reminiscent of the Erdtree than the double helix style of the Halig tree. Where's Puck? Puck ran out of luck. The worst part of Burke. Band of the Butterfly. I like that.
Tree is not seen anywhere else in the game as far as I know. So there could be some connection there with Miquella and creating trees. Also, Miquella seems to have a goal of bringing a true death to Godwyn, as seen in the description for the Golden Epitaph sword, which deals extra damage to those who live in death. And Melina also seems to feel some type of way about bringing death back to the lands between, saying this at the Forge of the Giants.
I have long observed the lands between. This world is in dire need of repair, and death indiscriminate.
She also seems to have ties to the Black Knife Assassins. She uses the Blade of Calling, which shares the unique fighting style of the Black Knife Assassins. And obviously she mentions Destined Death in the Frenzied Flame ending. So I think maybe Miquella/Melina was involved somehow in the Night of the Black Knives, and they feel some guilt about Godwyn's death going wrong. Or maybe it's a Marika Radigan situation where they have opposite motives, meaning the Melina half participated in the Night of the Black Knives and the Miquella half is trying to repair what she did. Just something to think about. So, what do you think? Is there something I missed? Am I onto something? Am I crazy? When the
All of the
DLC
above.
drops
No.
in June, and it turns out I'm right,
Ooh.
be sure to leave a comment here saying, validated, you're a genius, you're godlike. And if it turns out I'm wrong, that just means Miyazaki knows I'm onto him, and he changed it, and he's probably coming after me. Be sure to like and subscribe if you want to hear more nonsense like this. Peace.
All right, so even though I do have like a lot of disagreements with the base theories and whatnot, I do rather enjoy the way that you set up that it's kind of not meant to be taken like hyper seriously and whatnot. I definitely appreciate that. It was a very open invitation for criticism and whatnot, and you've been a very good sport in the chat, and just like the kind of honesty I think on display at the end there makes me really enjoy the video. For a first video, it's really well done. Now we just got to get you on like the lore tuber habit of getting all your footage offline with the HUD off, so that way you don't have like spectral ghosts ruining your shot. But no, it's perfectly fine. And I was actually thinking, like, when watching this, maybe that's probably better for when you don't have like a lot of super relevant footage, that you have like all this kind of random stuff going across the screen, because it's a little bit more engaging than just like the static shots of like the characters talking into the camera. So I don't know if you necessarily have to like have the higher production value to still have like a visually entertaining thing, or like, I don't know, it doesn't necessarily make the points any different. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and link the video for you guys into chat if you want to give timdiggity a like and a sub. He said he's going to cover more stuff in the future. We do have his trailer breakdown that we haven't gotten to. I don't think I'm going to get to that tonight because I spent like too much time staying awake yesterday. So I do want to end kind of earlier than yesterday at the very least. But okay, before doing that, I do want to address some of the notes that I was taking throughout the video. So you don't necessarily have to have like direct answers for me for this stuff, but throughout watching it, some of the questions that arised in my mind about any potential connections between Melina and Miquella would be that, and you address some of them later on in the video, like the first one with, if Melina is the kindling maiden, does that make Miquella the kindling maiden? And then where, when, why, how was he burned? And then depending on one's individual answers to each of those questions, then you would need to help recontextualize what that means in relation to Melina, which I don't think this video did the best job of, but it also didn't entirely set out to go through that way, which is perfectly fine. And then the other questions that I have would be that if Melina is like directly related to the Round Table Hold, would that imply Miquella should also be directly related to the Round Table Hold? You might be able to say the reason that Melina is not an actual finger maiden is because she's therefore Miquella, which might help create some of your points for you. I don't know. But then we have like a lot of other weird stuff to consider, like why does Miquella understand the spoken echoes of America? But I also think that's the exact same question we could pose about Melina, so I don't really think that's a big issue. But then would be like, can Miquella or just demigods in general grant the power of runes onto the Tarnished? Maybe. So that doesn't necessarily detract from the points of the video, but I think these are kind of interesting questions that get brought up as a byproduct of the video. And then we have, why does Melina not give a shit about Melania? Is it because their names are too similar? Yeah, no. So if Miquella is Melina, why do his goals seem to abruptly change is kind of like the biggest question that I have. So he abandoned Golden Order fundamentalism. Fine. He wanted to cure Melania, but he like stops. Okay. He made unalloyed gold to cure Melania, but he just kind of like abandons that. Then he also makes the hailing tree for some whatever reason. Does my man's Miquella just have like the world's worst case of Empyrean level ADHD and he just cannot finish a project? Maybe. And then how does Miquella as Melina serve any of his purposes by abandoning all of these other projects to fulfill his so-called mother's wishes? So I feel like there's a really big mischaracterization between like the path Melina is on versus the one that Miquella is on. And then obviously with like the story trailer that we get today, actually I'll leave that point alone for now. But like even without like today's trailer, one thing that I would be wondering is if we have like at the time of this video coming out, information about Miquella being active and at large in the Shadowlands, how does that fit into Melina kind of following us along on our journey? Is it that Melina is still doing a bunch of stuff as Miquella in the Shadowlands and only like calling us on her cell phone whenever we get into a side of grace and we just don't actually see what she's doing? I could potentially see those arguments being made, but I still don't really think that is super, I don't know, reassuring. I'm failing to find the word. I don't even know what I want to say. I don't think that's very reassuring that Miquella would still be doing stuff in the Shadowlands and Melina is just periodically checking up on us. Does that mean like the Miquella version of Miquella in the Shadowlands is also presenting as Melina, or is this like dream stuff going on? You don't have to have like specific questions for that or like specific answers for that, but those are the kind of things that I do wonder in response to this. And then I think I had one other thing there. Okay, yeah. So tying into that point with Melina being like the finger maiden, in fact, sacrificing herself for her mother's vision, why would Miquella do that rather than continuing down the dark path of an Empyrean and becoming a god of his own? Is there like something going on, or did he like lose his memories when he got burned as Melina? Is that part of the reason why he forgot all of these projects? It's just all amnesia, as Donkey would say. So those are my immediate like thoughts and criticisms of it before all the extra context of the DLC trailer that we've seen. So I like the idea. I just don't think it really works out for a variety of reasons, but I kind of get the feeling you probably don't either. So Ash King thinks that way back in the day, the Godskin Apostles' Wrath of the Nobles and whatnot was kind of like Wrath of Gold. Yeah, I think that's a pretty common idea. And it might have just been like altered because it's like the Godskin version of Wrath of Gold. You didn't expect anyone to watch it? Yeah, that's fair. Especially for a very first video, you probably did expect 200,000 views in the span of a month. That's awesome, man. Congrats. Appreciate all the feedback. Oh no, absolutely. Thanks for sticking around for it. Oh yeah, Waves thinks that Melina also used like a cut Miranda flower spell. Yeah, I really wish that was in the game. Maybe we'll get it in the DLC, but like unironically this time. Oh yeah, and then stuff with like death. Like why would Miquella start becoming more concerned with like giving death to Godwin, or like life to the lands between? I think that just kind of goes with like the ADHD points. Jedediah says, it begs the question of how dual personality people work in Elden Ring. You've always been curious about if Radagon and Marika ever had the, well, you ever seen them in the same room together problem? Yeah. Can they do things separately from each other? It is a really big unresolved question. And the cool thing is the new trailer resolved none of it. It kind of only brought up even more questions as to like whether or not Marika was turning into Radagon even in the cutscene we saw at the very beginning of the trailer. Tim says, do I think Miquella is the one who wanted Ranni to give us the spirit calling bell? Curious of what I think about that. I honestly don't really have too strong of an opinion. Like I've just to like present like my own schizo theories, like when I was making my Glow-Eyed Queen video and considering all of this stuff that I knew about Melina and Marika and their potential like odd connections to the GEQ, I was like, wait a second. It's not Marika of Daughter in the internal files. It's Lady Marika being used to describe Melina. What? Is Melina Marika? What? And so I'm like thinking about it more and more. And one of the points that I brought up in my video on the Glow-Eyed Queen is that if Ranni gives us not only the spirit calling bell, but also the spirit ashes of 3 lone wolves, why is it that when we go to Fair Missoula, there's a figure of a woman who kind of resembles Marika, surrounded by 3 wolves in front of the Elden Ring? And it's like, holy crap. If Melina equals Marika, then 3 wolves check out, Elden Ring stuff checks out. Then could the previous owner of Torrent been Ranni? Is that why Torrent like helps designate like the one who would become Lord? I don't really know if that works for a variety of reasons, especially seeing Torrent here. That's why I was like wondering in my first picture analysis as to whether or not this would be Marika or Miquella, because they do kind of have a lot of similar features. But I ultimately felt like Miquella was like the right call with the styling of the hair there. But ironically enough, like some of the theories that like maybe this is where like Marika did her first stuff ended up turning out to be true despite this being Miquella. So it just kind of like worked out, I guess, for that time. So yeah, ultimately not to give like a non-answer, but I really don't know about the spirit calling bell. So I'm just like a perpetual sitter on a fence of lore here. And yeah, I have no idea why Miquella would be helping us. It almost seems more like we would be helping him than anything. Galamoth says, you're surprised there isn't a holy gold flame? People were talking about Placidus Axe on the Elden Beast, but I don't know if somebody else in chat just mentioned it. There's also the Blade of Calling, which is technically like a golden holy flame. Actually, I don't know if it does fire damage, but either way, it's like kind of like the golden version of Destined Death, almost. Yeah, and the ulcerated tree spirits also have the golden flame breath. True. Placidus axes might do fire damage and Elden Beast does holy? Interesting. No worries. Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. All right. So yeah, no, that was definitely a fun video. Good job for a very first video. It's definitely better than my first video. I can definitely say that much. Don't watch it. It's pretty bad. So, all right, everybody, that'll be it for tonight's stream. Thank you so much for sticking around with even more lore analyses of a trailer, which I attempted to analyze earlier. And, you know, following along with looking into the schizo theories, as they like to proclaim. I kind of don't like saying schizo. I don't know if it's like derogatory or not really. So I might try to stop saying it. I don't know how I feel about it. I don't necessarily think like it would be like a good thing at the very least. So maybe I'll just stop saying it regardless. But either way, that's kind of where my headspace is now. So I'm going to go ahead and share the video in chat again in case, yeah, you'd stray away long term. That's kind of how I feel. I'm going to go ahead and share the video again in case you guys didn't give timdiggity some love. And maybe tomorrow we'll continue some like more trailer stuff. Maybe not. Maybe I'll go back into like more reserved stuff, like other people cook for a bit and then come back to it. And yeah, I'll figure it out. So stay posted as always. We'll be going live again at the same time of 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So hopefully we'll catch you on the next stream. Till then, take care, stay safe. Last Protagonist out.